Hey guys, welcome to Almost an Agreement. Sam's going to do the rest of the intro. Go.
No.
Damn it.
You tried.
I know. I got to sneak it in on him, and he just doesn't know what he's going on, and he's just, oh, okay. So it's,
We are almost in agreement.
It's December 11th. This will come out December 12th. We're almost in agreement. almostinagreement@gmail.com. Find us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube. Hey, you may or may not be able to find us on Instagram. We have a website, almostinagreement.com. Please go check us out there. And go to your favorite podcast provider. And while you're at your favorite podcast provider, please subscribe or follow, as well as give a great review and rating to help get the word out to other people. Please, on our Facebook page or Twitter account, please follow us there as well. Like or share. Tell your friends about us, that kind of stuff. I am working on a project with Hornbeck and the Compass guys on a job listings, basically, for the upcoming election. So it's a little bit better breakdown of what the job actually is for all these people that are running. We got a ton of candidates coming up, but we'll talk more about that later as well. So almost an agreement at gmail.com, almostinagreement.com. I think that's all the different stuff. Find us at those places, help us out, and we're going to do a show. What up, son? Oh, what a very disappointing Friday for me, I have to say.
I'm sorry to hear that.
I was really excited. I was going to have Herrera in, and then you were coming over because Max is out of town, which turns out he's at the Army-Navy game. I didn't know that's what he was doing. He just said he was out of town. And then AC's at work again.
Yeah, yesterday was my first full day off in like 2 weeks, so I wanted to.
Yeah, well, I'd feel bad, but you keep working for those other people.
Yeah, it's true.
I mean, I ain't mad at that. That's fine. But Herrera had to cancel. He had some family emergency kind of thing going on, and I'm not going to get mad at him for that. And we're going to reschedule as soon as we can. So I'll get him in here and we'll talk some more. But I was excited to chat with him, just to get, how he sees the city race looking backwards, because they were very confident in conversation.
Right.
I mean, he and Randy and a number of the candidates were very yeah, we're going to win some seats here. I think I believe Herrera was quoted as saying we're going to take all 5, and it's like,
well, none of them were a blowout, were they? Relatively
two
close.
Two of them were fairly close. The other
Compared
three
to
were
500 people that go vote.
Right. The other 3 were pretty significant. We've had this conversation a bunch of time. What is a landslide victory?
Right.
And I think about 10%, 15%, they count that as a pretty significant win. And I think most of them were over that. I think 3 or 4 of them were over that. It was because 10% is 55 to 45. To me, that doesn't seem like it's that big of a disparity, especially when that's only 50 people or whatever.
Right.
But I don't know. That's what I took it as. When I thought it was pretty convincing incumbent win. But again, you also had the incumbent factor too. How different would that have been? Let's say it was Kim Smith out here running against Roberto, and they're replacing somebody completely different. How different is that race if Roberto isn't the incumbent in that race versus him as the incumbent? I think that is a factor, because that's what goes into that judge thing we were talking about last week, and it happened, and Judd Davis got appointed to the seat. Remember talking about that last week? So he got appointed to the seat, and so now he's going to continue to campaign to keep the seat as an incumbent now, even though it's an appointment, because the other judge retired early.
All right.
Which is, I think it's kind of ugly. I don't know. I can't say that the judge didn't have a reason to retire early. It might have been his time. He might have had some family, personal health issues or something like that actually caused his retirement. But at least in the optics of it, it seems a little bit dirty politic-y more than it does.
Very coincidental.
Right. Excuse me. The Tommy Smith one was a little bit different just because the mayor stole Stephanie Welch.
Yeah.
And that's why Stephanie had to vacate her seat. But Tommy Smith still same kind of deal. He took...
Right, but he was in the seat for a good 6 to 9 months.
More than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's like
I don't know.
He was brand new to it.
Obviously it's a 2017 election.
It's a 2-term. Or a 2-year term.
It's a 4-year term.
4-year term, okay.
Right, so that, because... it's a 4-year term, because... Kincannon took the mayor's office in 2019, and that's when she pulled Welch out of District 1 into her office. Yeah. And so but Tommy Smith had been in the seat for a solid almost 2 years, if not 2 full years. going into that election cycle. So it's a little bit different, but it's also kind of that same, like, you have a particular leaning that is the city council getting to appoint somebody. And I don't know. I think Tommy Smith probably still beats Liz Murphy, but I'm just saying it's a different, if it would been, if this would have been 2 years ago, instead of it being the appointment of Tommy Smith, how different would that race have been had it been two new candidates as opposed to an incumbent versus a new candidate? So
it's hard to say.
It is hard to say, I think, but there is, they say, like, I want to say that, like, at least on national race, like some of the national politics people that I follow, they say like the incumbent's like a good 5 points. Like it's like a 5-point lead almost automatically, unless other XYZ is going on.
Right.
But like, all things being equal, if the only difference is that one's an incumbent and one isn't, doesn't matter about like party affiliations and all that kind of different shit. It's usually the incumbent has a 5+ point advantage just for being the incumbent.
What if they ever go back and look at like, hey, I knocked on these doors and these people never even showed up to the polls?
Matt knows. That's what he's saying. Like,
I'm sure they do that event-wise. Like, hey, we did an event here and only 25 people showed up.
Right, and then
maybe we should move that event.
And then the precinct that we did that event in only turned out X number of people to the polls.
Yeah. I'm sure there's some statistician.
So let's talk about the scam, or the either legitimate thing you got from Nancy Pelosi's office or the scam.
Yeah.
Because this is interesting on this factoid.
Is it?
Because you sent me that picture.
Yeah.
And it was a screenshot. You got a text.
It was probably like 5 times longer than that.
Right. But it was a text that was from Nancy Pelosi's office or whatever, right?
Supposedly.
It's a picture of her, and then it
didn't say her office. This is Nancy Pelosi, and like had like a picture of her.
Right. Yes, it is. That is a picture of Nancy Pelosi. I agree. But but anyway, it's one of those. It's like, let me find it here.
Just like it's a picture, it's going to make it that much more convincing. It's like
right. Like you couldn't get this off of Google right now. Right. Actually, that's probably her .gov. That's probably her.
That's
Speaker of the House picture.
Yeah, that's probably.
But it says the 3 reports just revealed Dems' majority is in critical danger. I need you to read my entire message, then rush $13 by midnight or whatever.
Yeah, I think it mentioned supposed like a New York Times and a Washington Post. It mentioned like 3 supposed.
I agree, but I agree with that part of it. I think there is a with the Virginia governor's race being one of the factors in play, which has a forecasting ability. Often the Virginia governor's race forecasts what the midterm is going to do following it, and so since a Republican won the Virginia whatever, it is a standard.
It was a tight race, yeah.
But it is a standard as history has gone on. If the Virginia House or the Virginia governor flips, then the House and Senate will follow in the midterms. Awesome. It's a semi-standard, and so there's a lot.
I think I've said it before. I think we're just fickle people.
I agree. But it's
like, you didn't do so good. 4 years later, like, we'll try the other team. Like, you guys didn't do so good. Let me try the other team again.
You went and promised an X, Y, and Z, and nothing's coming through. So I'm not going to vote for you again.
It's easy about the 2-party system. We just flip back and forth between the two.
Right. It's like, I'm not going to vote for you again because you said you're going to do all these things, and you had the time and energy and space to do it. You didn't do it.
You didn't give me an extra check for a foot massager.
Whatever. But that's the thing. But anyway, so I took the screenshot you sent me, and I turned around and I sent it to Matt.
Right.
And I didn't tell him it was sent to you. I told him I got this thing, and he's like, "Why would they send it to you?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Our data knows that you're not worth trying to." Because if it's a party message, like they have a system that does it.
50-50, and he wasn't sure.
Well, he was asking me for the rest of the message,
right?
Because it would probably clarify on which URL, like what the URL said on where you were supposed to send the money, kind of thing.
To click on that.
I agree with you. I'm just saying
the hyperlink was just some weird jarble. There was no like words,
right? But he might have recognized it just because it may be one that he uses in his kind of stuff. And so, the moral of the story is it didn't sound odd to a party chair.
I thought the $13 was a really odd ask. You send me $13 by midnight tonight.
Yeah, it has a hinky feeling all over it. I think it's a scam too. I agree. From what I see of it, I think it's a scam too. But the point is, because we were talking about data and the data these parties have, like when Matt thought it was to me, he was like, "That it's probably a scam if they send that to you because we wouldn't send that to you because we know you're not going to do it."
Right.
It's like, oh, okay, because those cost them a nickel, a dime, whatever it is per text message that goes out that they do like that. When the party does it, at least, again, don't know what the scam part is, but when a party does something like that, which they do, it costs them money, and they are very particular about who they send it to. And so, He's like, I don't know why they sent that to you. And it's like, oh, yeah, because your data tells me that. Which I see, again, I don't know if I agree with their data. I don't know. I guess I do.
I think on the GOP Democratic scale, I think I chose more Democratic than the last time I did go vote.
Well, but I mean, they don't know your voting record. They know your primary record. Because who you voted for, where you voted, if you voted where you voted, that's public record.
I didn't vote in the primary. The last one I voted for was presidential.
Right, but I'm saying that, but they have I mean, what do you...
And the time before that was...
You have 22 years of voting...
5 years ago.
Right, you have 22 years of voting record. You didn't vote every time, obviously.
Right.
Or not quite 22 years, whatever the math is. But they have all of that. They can look you up by name and address or some significant factor that shows your name versus another person with the same name as you. Because, I mean, Matt said when he looked at me up in the DNC database, not just the Knox County one, there are 2 people with my name as registered voters in the country. And one's in, like, Arizona. And one's in Knoxville. So he was guessing the one in Knoxville was me. It's like, yeah, you're right. You're 100% right on that. But they don't know who you vote for, but they know what primary you pull and how often you vote and stuff like that.
Right.
And then they have, they have other data that they get from other places, but as far as from the election commission and stuff like that, that's the only data they can get from the election commission is your frequency of voting and what primaries you pull.
Right.
And so I pull Republican primaries because I want to actually vote for who might win the seat for the most part in Knox County, which a Republican primary is, normally the case, at least for my section of Knox County. Like if I was in South Central Knoxville, like you are, I think Gloria Johnson's your rep, right? Or Sam McKenzie?
Same.
Okay. Because Gloria Johnson and Sam McKenzie butt up right against each other somewhere in there. I don't know exactly where the lines are because over on the Alcoa Highway side, that's Gloria Johnson's district. But then Chapman and towards Iams and stuff like that is Sam's district. What little bit of Sam's goes into the south side. It's a weird line.
Yeah.
It's a district line, so it's weird, of course.
Yeah, why
not? If I was living over there, it might be a little bit different conversation. But like District 18, I go to my Gina Eddy race all the time. I took that primary because I was convinced when I was going to vote in that primary that whoever won that primary was going to eventually win that seat. And I liked Virginia Couch, and I thought she was a good candidate, and she had a stall for me. Honestly, if Gina had won the primary, I would have probably voted for Virginia in the general. But Eddie ended up winning the primary, and I think I voted for Eddie in the general. But I think, my voting record aside, the historical reality is in District 18, whoever wins that Republican primary is going to win that seat, and it's going to be interesting to watch. I'm one of the things I was going to ask Daniel specifically about is like, who are you going to primary in 18? Because they're going to primary Eddie, even though it's not traditional to primary somebody who's an incumbent, but they're going to primary him because the party doesn't like him.
Yeah.
And they're going to primary him, and Eddie's going to lose the primary. And then what's Eddie going to do? Because he runs as an independent, that opens the door for the non-Republican to win if Eddie runs as an independent. If they push him.
Yeah, but it has been 4 years. It's only been 2.
State House is a 2-year seat, period. All the time, every year. Yeah, like Knox County has 5, 6 State House reps that go in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, and 89 all touch part of Knox County and have precincts that vote in Knox County. But they're every 2 years. So that'll be on this election, that'll be on the 24 presidential election. We just voted for this back in the 20s.
Yeah.
On election interference and craziness, did you see the story about the Trump's PowerPoint presentation on how to overthrow an election thing?
No.
It was pretty crazy.
What?
Like it was pretty much like... and
it was somebody found the actual PowerPoint
file. Like it got leaked or something like that. But there's... I don't know. It's one of those that, and this is me, the super skeptic of media kind of thing, is that part of me thinks that it was literally somebody who put together a PowerPoint presentation for Trump to explain how it would have to be for him to not, or for him to still be president. Whether this was instructions on how we're going to do it, or this is instructions on how it would have to happen for you to keep it. It's not clear in the stories that I've heard on whether this was Trump says, go figure it out for me and then we'll execute, or whether it's, is this possible? Is it even possible?
Right.
And so I don't know. I tend to they
were like, all right, this is the only way it's going to happen.
This is the only way it could happen. See how ridiculous it is? You can't do it any other way. And then parts of it start happening. And, was it planned or not? I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not clear to me from the coverage I've seen so far on whether that was like the blueprint and that the Jan 6 insurrection, whatever you want to call it, was part of it. Or if it was just kind of like other people that knew parts of the pieces and how the thing actually worked were acting independently and all kind of congealed into a mess.
I haven't heard anything about it.
But yeah, nonetheless, it's pretty crazy. Either way, it's crazy.
The only thing I've heard about the Orange Man was apparently it came out that he tested positive before one of the
I heard about that too.
Debates.
Which, I mean, not excusing the actions. I think it's a dick move, but it's also Trump. Of course he's going to do the dick move in the situation and go out there positive and be like, I don't fucking care. Not even the philosophical, like, we're anti-mask, whatever, because that was even before all that stuff really started kicking in.
Right.
And so it's literally just no, I'm fucking Trump. I'm going to go out there and do my debate, and I'm going to kick this old man's ass, even though he's like a year younger than you, older than you. I don't remember who's older. No, Biden's older by a couple of years.
Yeah, they're only a couple of years apart, I think.
But yeah, anyway, I saw that. I heard that story as well.
I hadn't heard that.
Yeah, to look it up. It's, I mean, again, it's unclear to me.
This has been verified.
The way it read, I mean, the way the story read is that this was Trump's blueprint for his overthrow of the United States government. That's the way the story read. But my skepticism says I'm going to hold out a little bit because I could see where you could get that take on it. Like, it makes sense that take is a logical, viable take. But to go to the conclusion that, like, again, to me, it's not clear who even made this thing and where it came from. It's just, this is Trump's PowerPoint on how to take over the government. I'm not jumping in head first into that theory just yet. I don't like Trump. Don't get me wrong, but I'm not going to go that far down the rabbit hole just to display my hatred for Trump. He's got enough things you can actually hate him for that has nothing to do with that kind of stuff. But I was reading in Reuters before we got started. There's a Reuters article about the Omicron variant. Apparently is of the 43 cases, and this is why this is kind of a stupid article, of like the 43 confirmed Omicron cases in the U.S., like 37 of them are people who have full vaccination and like 13 of them had a booster as well. But like 6 of those 13 that had boosters had their boosters within 2 weeks of testing. And so it's before the booster officially fully kicked in. So somewhere around 10 people 10 Americans in the U.S. have gotten it, the Omicron variant, with full vaccination and a booster.
Right. I heard a couple of days ago, I want to say it was...
And only like 2 unvaccinated people
Houston,
got it.
It was a large city in Texas, and another city, they tested the wastewater, and it tested present in the wastewater itself. Yeah,
they were doing that at UT here, weren't they?
Yeah, they did test the dormitory, or some of the dormitories.
I mean, it's kind of neat.
Well,
kind of creepy.
The statistic of people that tested positive, I mean, the way you presented it sounds skewed, but I would also think those people would be the ones that would be more apt to go and get tested if they had the sniffles or something as well.
Right, I agree with that too. I mean, yeah, the p-value or r-value or whatever it is being a little bit off because of, right, people who have had the vaccine and are vigilant in their pandemic response or whatever you want to call it are more likely to go get tested more often and therefore are going to be more likely to be found to have it, when for every one that's actively going out and getting themselves tested, there's 100 that aren't.
A lot of the tests, they're not doing the genomic sequencing
right.
or whatever. They're trying to figure out what strain it is. They're just basically like, all right, you test positive for corona.
Right.
But leave it at that.
The Reuters article goes on to say that they don't think that the current vaccines are going to do well against the variant, but they also say that this variant apparently has even milder symptoms than most.
Yeah, I think that's what I've read too.
I've heard that it's more contagious. It's going to spread more and easier, but it's less likely that people are going to get really, really sick and hospitalized off it. And then Reuters goes on to say that it might overwhelm the healthcare system. And it's like, well, I mean, I get it, because even though it's less damaging symptoms and stuff like that, or less serious symptoms as it, if it's infected more people, it's going to get a higher number of seriously sick people just because the full volume of people is bigger.
Right. No, I mean, we've still got National Guard at UT Medical. National Guard still on duty in many other hospitals.
Right. I mean, some of that's their own fault, though. Like, I mean, we've like the traveling nurse thing that's been going on it's just a weird system. There's been a lot of nurses quitting to go travel because they get paid twice as much.
Some, but I mean, I wouldn't think it would be more than like 3, maybe 5% tops.
I don't know the math.
Which is still a decent large number, but I don't think there's that many people that are single and would uproot themselves just to travel around and be a nurse.
I don't know.
Those people have an apartment or whatever that they're renting.
I mean, with some of these contracts that they're throwing around, I don't know, man. I mean, because they get per diems and stuff. They get some sort of housing while they're there. They don't pay for that out of pocket. It's not like they got to go rent their own hotel room.
Right.
So they still pay their rent or mortgage or whatever back home. They just go for 3-6 weeks and then come back for a couple of weeks and then go take another contract somewhere else and get paid, 150, 200, 250% of what they're getting paid for the same amount of work at home. I mean, I agree that, I don't know if I would do that with the family and all the other stuff that I've got going on, but I'm not a nurse, so I don't have to make that decision.
Well, I mean, I think even years ago, there was still a need for just general, like, healthcare workers.
Right.
Whether it be nurses, physician assistants.
I always, like, I agree with that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm always curious on the why. Because when you get to some of them are highly specialized, highly trained, highly educated individuals, but there are also...
I would think some of the push was we know that the baby boomers are getting older, so there's going to be more need for kind of like long-term healthcare workers and home health nurses.
Right. I don't know. I just think there's... Like, that's always a question to me. It's like the demand is high. Like, the demand has been high for a while now. And why isn't it getting fixed? Like, I don't understand why that job isn't attractive to people.
Crank people through nursing school, medical school.
I agree, but I mean, this has been a topic of conversation for years. This isn't new now. It's more highlighted now because of what's going on. But we've been talking about a shortage of healthcare workers for a couple decades.
Right.
Well, I mean, we can crank some kids through medical school and shit in a couple decades.
We've had a shortage of anything. We've had a shortage of teachers for years.
Yeah, but that one makes sense because they get treated like shit and paid for nothing. Like, I mean, sure, like, okay. And I didn't stipulate the variables at play here, where the medical field is a better paying job, generally. Comes with better benefits. It's usually the perks of why you go to work are usually higher in the medical field, specifically if we're contrasting them to education. Like, I understand why we have a shortage of teachers. That one makes sense to me. Because the only teachers that teach long-term are teachers that really like teaching and really like kids and X, Y, and Z. Because you sure as shit don't do it for the money. But I feel like nursing, for the most part, is one of those jobs that you can do for the money. Like, you have to have some care for it, obviously.
You have to have some care to want to go into healthcare.
I mean, I don't know.
You think that many people got into healthcare just for the money?
I would assume that there's as many, if not, I would say
welders make a shit ton of money. To
pull an AC, well, that was a social stigma thing with trade schools when we were kids. I mean, I remember it being kind of like a social. You're not going to college? Did you not get the same feeling in high school?
I guess somewhat to an extent.
I mean, I thought that like it felt like it all but said out loud to me.
I'm saying if you got somebody that's just looking for a high-paying job, like there's other jobs outside of healthcare.
Again, I'm not disagreeing with that fact of it. I'm just saying that...
I'm just pushing back on your, I don't know, kind of generalization you were trying to make. That
I don't understand why we haven't caught up. I mean, maybe not 100%, but why we haven't caught up. I mean, the job perks are there. It's a high-demand job, which that's one of the biggest things that I think is undersold to students when they're going into school and when they teach stuff.
With it being healthcare, it's also harder to get through school. I'm sure there's, I don't want to say a decent fail rate, but I don't think it's a 100% pass rate or even 95% pass rate.
I don't know. I would assume it's not 100% either. No. But it's school, and there's, well, I mean, you take on the debt for it. That's one of the issues, is that it's a harder school. It takes longer to do. And so even though it's a higher paying job on the other side, you're actually getting paid next to nothing, because the first 15 years of the job, you're losing 50, 60% of your annual pay to paying off your student loans.
Right.
But
I still don't get how they get away with, I think it's more like doctors, whenever they do their residency or whatever, can work a 36-hour shift or some crazy shit like that.
I don't know. I mean, like, and to what?
But there's labor laws, like, but he's a doctor. Oh, all right, never mind.
But I mean, like, to what? Like, what's?
He gets to take a nap sometimes, right? Okay.
What's the point, though? Like, that's what I don't get. It's like,
I think a lot of they've got to get so many hours in, or I don't know if it's kind of like, you know, what fast food does with like the shitty lower level managers. Once they get them put on salary, they're like, oh, we can work you however much we want.
Yeah, maybe. Or it's you have to get so many. You actually have to work so many hours for it to count as your residency. So the more we squeeze in 2 months, and then we can kick you out.
Once I get this over with, I can actually start getting paid. I'm not an intern anymore.
Right. Maybe that's what it is. But yeah. But like, what value is that for the actual individual other than getting the shit over with and getting to work?
Right.
Like, is it teaching them anything other than how to stay awake for a day and a half straight? Is that what value does that have for them or the patients, for that matter? But yeah. Anyway, like, again, it go to the grander conversation about it, though. I think, you know, healthcare is one of those where it's, if you can get through it, it's a stable long-term job. It's not going anywhere with the way the system's working currently. Like, it's going to go. We have the baby boomers.
I think you've got different areas of needs that have always been in need. So I know they've talked about issues, and doctors, they've started to run out of general practitioners.
Because you get paid more as a specialist.
Right. So more and more our doctors are going into specialized services, and they're just becoming not really less and less, but less, or I guess staying at just that general practitioner level.
Right. Because, yeah, there's no, like, I mean, I don't know, but that reads to me that you're doing it for the money. If, you know, I would say that if you're a general practitioner at this point, it's because you like the job more than you like the money. But if your statistics are correct that more people are going into specializations because they get paid more, well, then they like the money more than they like the job.
Not about more, but there's been a quote-unquote shortage of just kind of like general practitioners.
Right, but you agreed with me because they get paid more for being a specialist. Insurance pays more.
I'm agreeing with you on the fact that, yes, specialists do get paid more.
So what would be the explanation for why I drop out of general practice and go into a specialty? Because it's easier, because I only have to see one type of thing, and I get paid more.
I think some have a passion for different areas, where they're going into neurology or going into, I don't want to name off the other scientific stuff because they're escaping me right now, like foot and arm doctors.
That was another Reuters article I saw. I don't know why that just reminded me of it.
What is it?
Some court in Texas approved a Freedom of Information Act. A bunch of doctors and professors had asked the FDA for a bunch of paperwork on the virus progress, or not the virus, but the vaccine, all the different vaccine paperwork and stuff that the FDA had. And the FDA said, yeah, we'll get it to you in about 55 years.
The approval forms or something?
Yeah, just like all the data, that the FDA had collected and used as part of their approval process. It was like 329,000 pages of data and stuff they were asking for. Yeah. But the FDA was like, yeah, we'll get it to you because the court says we have to in 55 years. I thought that was a little hinky.
Huh. Yeah, it does sound kind of odd.
Yeah. I just need to start everything I ever say from now on with, I read a Reuters article and you're going to believe me. But I did actually. I read the one Reuters article, and then in the bottom section there was other stuff in Reuters, and I was like, oh, that's that one. I thought that was a strange combo. Jesse Smollett's going to jail.
I was just reading that.
That's fucking funny.
Got convicted.
I mean, I don't know if you should go to jail for lying to the cops, but it's still ridiculous.
I didn't see what he got sentenced to.
I mean, it's like a falsified police reports and shit like that.
No, as far as like what he got, not what he got sentenced for.
How much? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'm assuming he hasn't been sentenced yet. The trial ended
Just a few days
yesterday
ago
or the
something.
day before.
I mean, he had a decent defense that he was, or his defense attorneys basically said, like, well, you're believing liars. Of like the two people that he supposedly was accused of hiring to beat him up or whatever. It's not like that was apparently that was their only real defense.
And did they prove that they were liars in court?
I don't think so. Obviously not to the jury's preference. Because I think was it a jury trial or was the judge just a...
I don't know. I really don't know how the ins and outs of that particular of a court case would go.
Staging. That's what it was. I think it got kind of added a few more to it. He portrayed it as a hate crime. Then it was lying to the cops and the state themselves. They said, we spent so much money.
Right. Investigating this because you told us this is what happened.
Right.
And it turns out that it didn't happen at all. Count 1 is him telling the Chicago police officer that something happened. Count 2 was telling the same officer that he was a victim. 3 and 4 stemmed from him making claims, but to a different officer. 5 was telling somebody at another time that he was a victim. It seems weird to have 5 charges, which is really just telling the story one time.
See,
maybe
Chicago
2 times.
spent over 3,000 hours investigating.
Yeah.
Over $100,000.
I mean, again, I agree that I don't disagree necessarily that it should be a crime or that it shouldn't be a crime. I mean, I think that is filing a false police report and wasting taxpayer money for a hoax or a lie or whatever it is. I think that makes sense to be criminal.
I assume they also added in the cost to the state for putting on this trial as well.
I don't know.
Because a lot of times they'll go after that.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what you cost us to even just have to go after you.
Right. So I don't know if
over again for this.
That's a good question.
Bullshit.
We need lawyer Jamie in to ask that one because I know that
It's probably on a case-by-case basis.
But because I know in a lawsuit as a plaintiff in a lawsuit, you can't sue for legal fees that are part of the process. Like
it's generally more the defense does the legal fees when they're found not guilty. It's like, hey, you cost us this money for me to defend my innocence.
Yeah, I don't know. That's a procedural nightmare. Ooh, speaking of procedural nightmares, the David, I'm gonna have to find his name too. He's the attorney who succeeded in suing Chevron for like the largest single settlement in history of the world, like $9-something billion settlement in Costa Rica or something like that. Some middle South American country, I can't remember what it is. And he is the first and only attorney in the history of the United States to spend actual time in jail for contempt of court.
I think I've heard some of that.
Pretty crazy story, yeah.
And it's been going on for
a couple of years now. Yeah, he was basically on house arrest awaiting trial for like 2 years, and apparently like the original judge like tried to dismiss the case, and then the Chevron brought in somebody, and like the prosecutor didn't want whatever the prosecutor in the district was didn't want to take the case, and so the DA's office, wherever it took place, brought in an outside attorney that was basically provided by Chevron to be the prosecutor in the case. It's really weird, gross stuff. And essentially it's just Chevron saying, and they haven't paid they already lost the lawsuit, but they haven't paid any out yet.
Well, I'm sure they'll appeal it and appeal it and
Right.
appeal it. Because they've got the money to be able to do it.
Yeah, that's pretty nasty. Like that's nasty. And they should I thought
I remember seeing like a special on it. Yeah, it's somewhere in South America. Where they were like, no, there was no damage after it, and they shown supposed footage of them there, and there's like obviously like oil slicks like in the water.
Oh yeah, cancer rates are some ridiculously high because of how much has gotten in the water and this, that, and the other. Like all the communities around it, people are dying left and right from effects of whatever drilling operation they did there or whatever.
I mean, we're still finding shrimp and stuff in the Gulf from the was it the Horizon?
The BP.
Yeah, the BP spill.
Yeah. So, that you do the damage, you pay for it. That's the way the world's supposed to work. The idea that they're using the power of the U.S. government to sneak around, paying the damages that they did is fucking bullshit.
Well, some of that they play like the literal shell game, where it's a company within a company within a company, and Chevron may be the parent, but they are able to, I guess.
Right. This is like Chevron.
Somewhere in the writing of creation of these companies that so and so is not liable for this. You can only sue
Chevron Limited of Venezuela, which is a.
Right. They're like, we can let that one go bankrupt, and we'll just start another one.
Right. But that's not even what they're doing yet, though. Like, as far as I understand it, they're just like, nah, we're not paying it. And they're using the U.S. court system to get their way out of it. And it's fucking trash. I guess it should be the other way. Same thing with Assange and Snowden and stuff like that. It's the, it's the people that are exposing the wrongdoing that are the ones getting punished, not the people that are doing wrong. The U.S. government is spying on every single American. They can read your emails if they want to, blah, 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 blah. Snowden's hiding out in Russia instead of being praised as a hero because he went out and took a risk and told the public of the things that he was instructed to do a part of his job and didn't think it was right. And instead they just double down and they continue to do it. And now he's in hiding and Assange is going to die or whatever in London. Apparently he's crazy and his cat shits everywhere or whatever you were saying.
Yeah.
And so, it's gross. Like, that's the problem. Those are some of the stories that bother me.
It was in like the Ecuadorian assembly or embassy in London.
Yeah.
But he was also avoiding, it was like sexual assault charges out of like Sweden.
Yeah. I don't know about, I know there's some,
on top of the WikiLeaks leaks.
Yep. Don't worry, the Clintons will find him dead one of these days.
Yeah.
I don't know, those bother me. Those are the stories that, like, I think we were talking about it last week, where it's like, where, what was it? Like, there's that segment that you like a lot that's like the news that didn't happen this week thing.
Yeah.
And the disappointing part is how many people read these stories and go, I don't know. It's not true, or yes, it is true. It's like, I could believe it.
I don't know that it's not true.
Right.
I can't read that and be like, that's not true.
Right. I can believe it. And these are like that to me, it's like those, like, that's why those fly. Those fly because stories like the Snowden story or the David, whatever, oil, Chevron mess are real stories that are really happening. And that's why it's easy to believe all these other crazy things that aren't actually happening, but it tracks. It doesn't seem out of character for a group of some sort to do something like that.
Right.
So, I don't know. Optimism?
It's possibly believable.
Right.
I mean, we're also in the kind of freedom of information era.
Right.
Where before, you literally had to go to the Library of Congress and ask for a specific item to get, presidential archives or whatever, where a lot of that stuff digitized now.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's a lot easier to find.
Right. We are getting more information faster.
And there have been,
except for the
through
vaccine
the years,
thing.
slowly things becoming declassified that happened, 75, 80.
Yeah, like UFOs.
Not so far ago.
They've been releasing a lot of UFO shit in the last year or so.
Yeah, I know, like the Navy finally talked about it a little bit. But they were still basically like, this is the literal meaning of a UFO. It's identified. We're not saying this is extraterrestrial.
Right. We're not saying what it is. We're saying we don't know what it is.
There were things that we don't know what they were.
Right. But the little white Tic Tac thing is a pretty crazy story.
I don't know about the white Tic Tac.
That's the Fravor. He's the Navy pilot. And it's a known thing within the Navy, whatever. It's not like a new thing that just happened, but he's been allowed to go out and speak about it publicly. But apparently it's like 50,000 or 30,000 feet to like 5 feet in a couple of seconds.
And it looked like a white Tic Tac.
Yeah, it looked like a little white Tic Tac. And apparently, like, it went from, like, when they found it, they were just flying around doing some training mission or something like that. And they came across it, and so they started tracking it and following it. And it was, like, actively jamming radar. And when they re-established some sort of contact with it, as far as being able to figure out where exactly it was exactly at their planned, like, rendezvous point for the training exercise. So they were supposed to go out and do a training exercise and come back to this spot before they flew back in and landed or whatever. Well, they were found. They deviated from the training exercise, started following this thing around, and end up in the spot that they were going to end up in anyway, because that's where the thing flew to, or hovered to. No, got to. I don't know what the proper verb for its mode of transport is, but moved to. So that was a pretty crazy one. But I don't know. I don't know. I go back and forth on it. Like Rogan's thing, which he's really funny about. He's like, you know, we go to the Congo like every year, looking at the same group of monkeys and studying these same group of monkeys. You know, if you were an order of magnitude smarter than us, you'd stop in every once in a while and check out this group of monkeys. You know, but then at the same time, the counter argument is that like some fucking planet over there doing that thing, who gives a shit? They're going to kill each other eventually anyway. So why we don't need to bother with injecting ourselves into that world. That world's going to end. Oh, speaking of the world ending, World War III, the Biden Putin phone call this week was pretty exciting. Did you follow that story at all?
Like Putin said, it went pretty well.
I don't know. Like, it was weird.
Oh, I thought you were bringing it up because you had actually heard something about it.
I mean, I heard stuff about it. Like, just like the idea that, like, I mean, and I like when I heard it, I thought of you immediately in the phrasing is that we will not unilaterally, Biden said to Putin, we will not unilaterally put boots on the ground in Ukraine to stop you from taking it. But that leaves it wide open for if, you know, the UN or whatever WTO or whatever organization deems it necessary, then yes, we will. I don't know, whatever the fuck.
The World Trade Organization?
I don't know. Well, it'd be the UN, I guess?
It'd be the UN security, or NATO, maybe.
Okay, whatever. Either one. Whatever group that we're a part of says that, hey, this is a problem we got to do.
Sorry.
Because Ukraine is not part of Article 2 or whatever of the Geneva Convention. They're not an allied country that we are obligated to, because they're not a NATO country. Which apparently that's part of what this whole conversation started in, is because Putin said, "Hey, don't encircle Russia with NATO partners. We're not comfortable with you doing that." And then, like, I guess like Slovenia or a couple of other old Eastern Bloc countries had been allowed to enter NATO or the UN or whatever, which is what's pissing Putin off about it.
I was watching something the other day, and they were talking about. I think it was like during the USSR days, before Russia was, before Russia was Russia, then it was the Soviet Union, then before that it was Russia. But apparently during the Soviet Union days, airliners had to actually pay to fly over USSR, and I think that's the way it is still to this day. That you kind of like pay to transit over.
Right, to use their airspace?
Yeah.
Makes sense.
I guess that's part of like what's factored into some of the high cost of having to fly. So they were talking about most things don't fly over the Himalayas because it's so sparse. If you ever did have to go down, then plus the air turbulence is horrible over it, and jets normally fly at 30,000 feet, and Mount Everest is like 33,000 feet.
Right, and so to avoid that kind of crap, you fly over Russia and pay the extra because it's cheaper and safer.
Right.
Or it's at least safer and XYZ, yeah. Makes sense. I mean, I don't know. That's one of those curiosity questions, like of shit that happens every day and we see it all the time. Like, how does that actually work as far as, you know, airline rules and regulations go? As far as, you know, I mean, obviously a foreign military can't fly a jet over the United States, period. But like, if North Korea had like an airliner with a bunch of people on it and they flew over Alaska, would that be a problem? I think that would be a problem.
See, I don't know how that works. I'm assuming, you have flights that are planned. You have to have pre-flight authorization or whatever it's called. So they already know that's where you're going to be flying over. You have to put in, like, you're flying for this many at this direction and blah, 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 blah for this many minutes.
I guess a better example would be like Air Canada flying to Mexico. Some Air Canada flight from Toronto to Mexico City. Doesn't touch ground in the United States. We have trade agreements and we're good terms countries as far as, like, at least us and Canada are in good terms, and I think we're pretty decent terms with Mexico overall diplomatically. Is there a fee for those airlines to fly their flights over the United States?
I'm sure it's worked in mathematically in some kind of crazy equation.
I don't know. That's just an interesting little tidbit of things that I'm sure exist. I just don't know how they exist, I guess is the way to say it. But the threat of more economic sanctions on Russia, and that's how I took it. As far as I understood it, was that we won't put boots on the ground by ourselves. If somebody else tells us we need to go or we need to be part of a group that goes, we'll go. And or economic sanctions if you take hostility in Ukraine.
There's still random shots firing like right there along the Ukraine-Russia border.
Yeah.
In kind of disputed areas.
I'm curious how Russia and China are diplomatically.
They're neighbors.
I don't understand they're neighbors, but obviously Ukraine's a neighbor of Russia too, and they're not great diplomatically speaking. At least, well, I guess part of Ukraine considers themselves more Russian than Ukrainian, but what's that, Crimea or whatever that section?
Yeah, that Russia took back.
Yeah.
They're like, no, we want that back now.
Yeah.
This is ours.
Oh yeah, that was post the Olympics. That was they went and stole a bunch of gold medals and then invaded Crimea.
Stole the medal. That was that when they were cheating in Sochi.
Yeah, that was what that Icarus.
Yeah.
That documentary. Did you watch it?
Yeah,
I think it was crazy.
That was good.
Cool premise. Like that was the craziest thing about that to me was like the premise had nothing to do with that.
Right.
Like the point of the documentary he was trying to do is like, I want to see how much difference it actually made for Lance Armstrong.
Right.
To cheat.
Just happened to reach out and find the guy that
right.
runs the program for Russia.
While I'm figuring out how to cheat, I get the guy in Russia that tells me all about how much they cheated at the Olympics. And then there's
now he wants me to help him defect.
China's all pissed off at the diplomatic embargo of the Winter Games coming up.
Yeah, I think I heard that UK, Canada, and somebody else also agreed to not send diplomats, basically.
Like, I don't know what that means. Like, I mean...
They gave at least the most recent, which, I mean, still being during the pandemic, it was still kind of a crazy... I don't think they had any outside, like, actual spectators, but the First Lady went to the Olympics. So it was kind of like that, where you would send... Not necessarily like a diplomatic envoy, but you usually send someone that kind of represents.
Right, and that's economics. That's people spending money and buying gifts and hotel rooms.
Yeah, I guess it depends on how big of a party they send.
But I mean, I guess that's one of the things, too, is like I saw a video. It's TikTok. Obviously I'll take it with a grain of salt. But it was basically, it was putting the argument for why the U.S. hasn't hosted the Olympics in forever. And it was like, look, it's a multi-million-dollar project just to do a proposal. And then if your proposal is picked, it's billions of dollars in new stadiums and infrastructure and all the different shit you have to do to host one.
Well, I'm sure we've been vying for it. Because what they plan out, something like ridiculous. 12 years in advance or something like that?
Two or three Olympics away. I mean, I guess we could look it up, but I don't know. Like, I feel like...
We had Salt Lake City.
We had Atlanta in the 90s.
Atlanta was 96. It's like Salt Lake City in like 02, maybe?
Well, back then they were the same year. It was somewhere around then when they shifted it. Because it used not to be on opposite cycles. It used to be on the same cycle. So it would be like...
the Winter and Summer Olympics?
Right. It'd be like the 90s. It'd be... Yeah, there was a while there where they were not opposite cycles.
When was this? No, it's always been on it. For the longest time, it's been on a 2-year cycle.
I always thought it was like it would be like the 2020 Winter Games in January, February, and then it'd be the 2020 Summer Games following that up. Maybe I'm misremembering. I'm Berenstein Bearing that shit.
Can't remember the last time they've been that close to moving around.
Is that the Mandela or the Streisand? No, the Streisand Effect's the opposite one. The Mandela Effect. It's the Berenstein Bears thing. Like everybody collectively remembers a thing that never existed. And that's the Berenstein Bears, or because it's always been Berenstein Bears or Berenstain, I don't know, something. But the Streisand Effect was about her beach house. You remember that story?
No.
She bought a big fucking mansion in Malibu or whatever on the beach. And she kept calling the cops when people would be on her private beach. And so then the news started running stories about Streisand kicking people off her private beach. And like the whole point was she was trying to stay low key. She didn't want people knowing where she lives. And the more she tried to keep it under wraps, the more people knew. Wow.
Hey, Barbra Streisand kicking us off this beach. It must be where Barbra Streisand lives.
Right. And so that's the Streisand effect, is when you're trying to, the more you try to stop something from happening, the faster it happens.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't know.
No, I'm pretty sure every 2 years there's been an Olympics. And it alternates.
Yeah. So We got.
I don't think we've strayed from that.
Well, we got a World Cup this summer. We got Winter Games.
Did they decide if they were going to move it to winter yet? The World Cup? There was talk of moving it to December.
Oh, because it's in Qatar.
Qatar. Yeah, Qatar.
I've not heard. I mean, you've mentioned some stuff about how hot it is, and they're added water. They're probably gonna do the water break thing, and most games will be night
they did
games.
It in Brazil. I think they did it at the most recent. It was maybe like the Women's World Cup. They were doing it again. They've started adding in some like major tournaments. I guess it's some kind of caveat that if the weather is
certain,
we're going to go ahead and add in a water break.
Didn't watch the MLS Cup game tonight. I did watch a little bit of Man U. I forgot Ronaldo was back, and so I stopped on the channel. I was like, oh yeah, Ronaldo's back at Man U.
Oh, that's right.
Watched that for a minute. They were playing Norwich, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh. Maybe.
So one of those other teams.
One of the teams.
I mean, like that's the thing about Premier League to me. There's like 5 teams that I like know the names of, and everybody else is just random. Man U, Man City.
For a while, there was a decent
Arsenal.
constant, and then there's always kind of the bottom, like 5 or 6, that will kind of go up and down in relegation and blah, blah, blah.
I like the formula. I do. Like that goes back to the football talk of last week. That like I have the solution, and that solution includes some Premier League relegation concept into college football. If you want to make college football stay as big as it is with as many teams as it has in X, Y, and Z, but turn it into a statistical, this is how you get to the tournament thing like pro ball, you do it like that. You do it kind of like Champions League. Basically, like Top Cut, what is it, Champions League or the Euros or whatever? Right? Where
Euros are national.
Okay, so the Champions League, where it's like the...
Which they do qualifiers for that, but I think even that goes through, like, for a couple of years, like qualifying. It's kind of like the World Cup qualifying. World Cup qualifying is going on.
Because we have CONCACAF over here.
Right.
Yeah, and some of those games play both ways, too, I think. Like, there's some of the qualifiers that play into both things or some weird shit. It's funky.
Possible.
Anyway, but yeah, kind of like Champions League, where you have, all the big leagues in Europe. You have the Bundesliga and Premier League and La Liga and whatever the Spanish one is.
La Liga.
What's the Italian one? I thought that was the Italian one.
Series A. Series A.
Series A. Yeah. I don't know. Whatever. You have the big leagues in all the European countries, and then it's like the top 2 teams or whatever.
Something like that.
Or whatever go, and then they play a mega tournament of...
But that's all... That's like that season, whenever you finish your regular season, that'll go into if you qualify for the Champions League.
Right, but I'm saying you only qualify by what you did in your regular season. You can't. You're not going to have you don't have a Hampshire whatever club team that is in the second tier of the Premier League getting to go. It's only Man City, Man U, whoever the top couple teams are. I'm assuming that was always my assumption on it, is that it's a top teams from your regular season go get to play in this special European tournament.
Yeah, I'm not sure, because every once in a while I think there's been like some sleeper kind of like no-name teams that have made it pretty far.
Maybe it's just a money grab.
Yeah. Or they may do like pre-qualifiers where they pick like, the top 3 teams from the second tier league and the top 3 teams from the top league, and at least give them a fighting chance.
Yeah, maybe we should look into it before we talk about it, because I feel like an idiot now. I just know, if
we're admittedly postulating that we don't know.
Yes, we absolutely don't understand how European football works, other than put the ball through the square thing at the end of the field. And I kind of understand how offsides works in soccer. I'm pretty sure I get that rule, and that's the most confusing rule to people in this country.
I understand offsides.
I didn't say you didn't. I just said I did.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't understand that rule in soccer. It is a common complication for American fans or American viewers of soccer.
Like, why don't they touch it with their hands?
Yeah.
Why don't somebody just pick up the ball and just throw it in there? Wouldn't that be easier?
No.
The guy's touching the ball, but he's got to wear gloves? Okay, so that's what it said. Everybody wears gloves, then you're not really touching the ball.
The ball's on fire. So you can't touch it with your bare hands.
Hot potato.
Give you frostbite. I don't know. I'm trying to. I feel like I'm running through things too fast. I'm trying to think of what I missed locally this week. Eric Wader out of the blue asked me to be on the show. Asked to come on the show. He's going to be on Monday, so we'll see what that's about. I'm curious, what his plans for the 22 election are. Obviously, he's going to play his role, whatever his role specifically is a little bit harder to nail down, but he's going to play his role and do what he does. And I'm curious how much he'll talk to me about it, but
it's like that's on a need-to-know basis.
I mean, it's like, it's interesting, like what, like, because, I feel like Joey Barnett, who was campaign manager for Eddie Manis, that's how he got talking to Matt Shears and Randy Pace in the first place. It's like, well, how does one get themselves into a position of wanting to be part of this thing, but not wanting to be the candidate? Like, what inspires you to be a campaign manager for whatever?
All right.
Which, when you get to higher levels, it's fucking good money. On top of,
it's all about the money.
You get to influence the way the world works, or the country, or the Senate, or whatever the person you're helping to achieve their goal is. You get influence into that system as well as being that thing. But like, I can't imagine that an Eddie Manis has it as a paid position. I mean, maybe it's a tit for tat, and that Eddie got the job, and so he then hired Joey Barnett to be his executive assistant.
All right.
And so that became the job once the campaign was over. So they both got a job out of it. And I'll bet you he gets paid better. Oh shit, I didn't even think about that.
That's what I would kind of think, that it opens up more doors for more opportunities. If you help a candidate do well, that's going to open the door for you helping out other campaigns, whether it's an off cycle or whatever. But if you're a failed candidate, you've just got to try to run again next time.
Yeah, but I still feel like, even if you're doing that, though, it's I don't know. Like I guess if there's if you're truly a party person and you really like the party values and all the party pillars and stuff like that, whatever candidate upholds those party pillars, you're helping elevate those policies and talking points and whatever. And so if you're, I'm trying to think of who else I've had on. Joey's the only one that keeps popping in my head, but that's not everybody. Like Matt Shears would be the example of the party chair. It's like, he believes in the pillars of the party, and he believes that his candidates are better at distilling a better society or whatever through the process, and blah, 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 blah. And so, like you said, he doesn't get paid to be the party chair either. But like you said, though, he gets to continually influence and take part in and assist in the end goal of pushing Democratic Party policies, because no matter who he puts through, they're going to put they're going to help push those policies, which around here is just making noise, to be fair, unless it's a city. Like, he texted me, he said he ran into somebody, some Republican senator, I think is what he said, some Republican senator from like Mississippi or something like that. Apparently he went to DC for some sort of vacation, because when you're a political dork, you go to DC for vacation, I guess. And he ran into some Republican in the airport and was just chatting with him, and he told him he was, the chair for a Democratic Party in Knox County, Tennessee, or whatever. It's like, it's got to be a pretty hard job in Tennessee to be the Democratic Party chair. And so yeah, I would assume that's true. Or it's a really easy job, because where's the pressure? You're not expected to win. It's a bad news Bears story.
Yeah, but I would think there's also a pressure for results, even if the expectations are lower.
But again, that's what I'm saying, though. It's like if I guess it'd be, are you picking up a percentage points? Are you picking up a chair here or there? Does that count as a win for us, or does that count as a win for you as the chair, or is that something that's happening anyway? I don't know. I just think it's like.
Oh, yeah. Thinking back to sports, we were talking about how often, coaches kind of like were given 3 years, and they're always like, fire him.
Right.
Bring in somebody new. Whenever they're doing okay, but not great.
Yeah, but again, when the history says that nothing is normal, like, not nothing is normal, that's the word I'm looking for. The expectations have to be low. If the expectations are high, because again, that goes to the AC's thing about football, though, is that the expectations are high, and that's why we only give them a couple of years before we give up and say no more. I feel like it's a little different in the politics game. If you're a Democrat in Knoxville, the expectations are low, should be low, and to have a chair that's picking up a seat or picking up a this or getting better turnout for that, or, you know, this district that used to be a 90-10 district is now a 60-40 district. That's a win, but is it really a win? Because you still lost a seat. It's shifting in that direction. But again, I don't know. But I mean, in the same cycle, is the party the same in that cycle? I don't know. It's just weird. I think it's gross. I hate the parties. I don't know if I've said that on here yet or not.
Just take the dishonest politics.
I mean, sort of, but I don't think the parties... I mean, I think the parties are inherently dishonest with the way they play. With the way they play with and against each other at the same time. That is probably the worst dishonesty at play. Is, as AC likes to mention, it's like they know exactly how much they need each other to survive. And what they both don't need is a third party, a fourth party, other people being part of the process. And it doesn't serve you or I. That's my problem with it. It takes out their need to serve us as their actual constituents. They just need to serve the party because that's what keeps them in power. Yeah. So... Yeah.
I just get burnt out on like the whole drum beating of the same kind of rhetoric. And I understand, you know, from a party standpoint, they want you to at least semi-toe the line and
I think it's
stay within the party parameters.
Well, I mean, I think the party
stick to their, you know, kind of talking points.
The party specifically both parties have a specific set of issues that are do-nothing issues. As far as they never really want to do anything with it, but they are base-activating issues.
It gets people to the polls,
right? It's the abortion conversation. It's Medicare for all is a left-wing. I think a lot of the healthcare and student loan forgiveness kind of shit. I think that's the left's version right now. They never actually want to do it, but they run on it constantly, and they're going to run on it constantly. It's like there's so many other issues that are real issues that you might actually do something about that you could run on. But those don't get the people out to vote for you. And so it's like this double-edged sword of, well, we're not talking about it because that doesn't get you excited. And then since you're not excited about it, we're making these decisions over here and nobody's paying attention to it. And they're real down-home actual issues that make a difference day to day, all that kind of shit. Yeah. But those aren't the exciting issues during campaigns. It's abortion and Medicare for all and critical race theory in the schools and all the other fucking bullshit that we're going to hear this year. And it's like, let's get real about some real shit that's going on that can actually make a difference. You know, because I think it's going to be I'm curious because I think I fucked up. I made this statement, and I apologize to all our listeners for it. I made this statement. I should have made it more an issue with every single candidate in the city races to talk about the stadium. I think we should have made it. I think it should have been more of an issue in those city races on... If they were all on the same page, maybe that's why. Maybe they were all fairly pro-stadium, which I'm not sure, honestly. I know the incumbents were fairly pro-stadium, and they went and voted for it almost immediately after the election. But I think that, you know, how much of that was based on, well, you know, I was fairly pro-whatever, and I got elected again, so obviously that wasn't an issue enough for people to not vote for me.
I think there was the one person that voted it down.
Right, and that was...
Dacia?
No, Dacia's commission.
That's right.
And I think she did, too. I think her and Lundy did it in commission, and then Amelia Parker and I think it's just Amelia in city council. And Amelia voted it down just because she had questions that weren't answered yet. It wasn't a no, I don't want to do this. It's a, I have things that you haven't explained to me well enough yet.
Right. That
I'm waiting for you guys to answer these questions before I want to say yes or no. And if you're going to force me to answer now, then I'm going to say no.
Right.
That's my understanding of Amelia's take on it.
Yeah. I would have done the same thing. Be like, hey, telling you my concerns. You wanted me to vote on this.
Right. I need to know the answer.
I'm sure they were like...
And they're like, you know what? The other 80 of you guys don't give a shit about those questions, so vote.
Yeah. Or pretend like we didn't...
8-1, done. See you later.
Yeah, I don't think we got that email. I must have got wires crossed somewhere.
You know, and to be fair, and not to shit on Amelia, and not to shit on these other people that are part of the process either, but at the end of the day, the city council movement got destroyed in those city elections. So the one city council candidate that's actually in a seat because she wasn't on the ballot this year, it seems that the city has spoken that they don't want that kind of candidate in these other seats. So, you know, the opinions of that person are devalued for that. And that's not necessarily Amelia's fault, but that's just what happened. You know, like there's 3 city council movement people and they all got beat by a lot in the primaries. And it's like, well, it seems pretty clear that the city doesn't really want to follow that path. And then there's one person that's actually in the council that is on that path. Well, their questions and concerns are obviously not important to the public because they didn't promote any of her helpers, for lack of a better word. Not to say that Amelia is wrong about her questions. I'm just saying that it does speak to that idea, wow, that it doesn't seem like it's an issue to the voters, so let's move on. Why are we wasting time with this thing that is obviously not an issue? But again, my apology when that was all. Is I think it could have been, as far as the things that they were drawing their lines on how I'm different than this candidate, I think that's one of them that I should have taken the time. Like you suggested last week, and we need to do with all the candidates this year. We need to have a set of questions that we make sure to ask each one of them when we have them on the show.
Well, that's just the way to be most fair about it.
Right. And just not forget to talk about it.
We don't show favoritism.
Right.
It's like, well, you were talking about how much they love puppies and blah, blah, blah. And the other person, it's like, well, were you, during Vietnam era, were you pro-war or were you anti-war?
Do you like killing puppies?
Yeah. Thoughts on euthanasia?
I mean, they're small Asian kids. What's wrong with small Asian people? It's fucked up, man.
Euthanasia. They got too many of them.
I mean, if you were to ask me that question as a candidate, I'm a proponent of the right to die. I don't think it should be a crime.
That's one thing that's still being debated in different states.
I
actually heard an interesting topic on it recently.
I was I need to let you borrow the book. Have you read the book Boomsday? It's a really good book. Read it years ago. And actually, AC stole it. I lent it to AC because I thought it was a good book and I thought he'd appreciate it. And he had it for like 10 years. And when he moved into his new place over here by me, I was helping him move some shit. I was like, hey, is that my book? He's like, yeah. And this is your bowl. And this is some other things. Like, we had a bowl that he swears I made that chicken dip in that I've never made before in my life. And he's like, here at this. And then like 5 different things. He had a whole box full of, it ended up being in different places, but it ended up being a whole box full of stuff that was mine that he had accumulated over the years. But it's a really good book. The premise of the book is that, basically to save Social Security and Medicare, they put a buyout if you will die early in retirement. Like if they'll let you, if you choose to be euthanized, basically earlier in retirement, they'll buy it out and it'll be less than how much they estimate it would cost for the next 20 years or whatever, because life expectancy is going up. And so people are retiring, and the thing was designed for you to have 15 years of retirement worth of money before the money ran out. And so it's like, well, we'll pay you essentially 10 years worth today if you die tomorrow, and then you can will that to your family and do whatever you want. Or you can live it out, but we have to spread it out and blah, 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 blah. And so it's this it's the whole premise of this thing. But anyway, it's fun. It's a fun book. You should read it.
Yeah. I thought this was actually like nonfiction.
No, it's Meg McMuffin, I think, is that her name?
I believe that's her name.
Yeah, she was. She'd asked for some nonfiction. She asked for some nonfiction books on a Facebook tweet or post or whatever, and I said it's not nonfiction, but I think it's a future history book. I think is what this book is. So give it a shot. And so I thought it was fun. I thought it was funny. It humored me.
I think that was a poor answer to a serious question.
No, it's a good book. I'm
saying it's not a good book. She's asking for non-fiction
I know,
books.
but I caveated it. I didn't tell her it was a nonfiction book. I said, hey, it's not a nonfiction book, but it's a really good book.
Right, I'm just saying it's a piss poor suggestion.
I mean, it didn't answer the question as asked.
Should have DM'd that,
I promote things I like. I'm sorry.
There's a book I haven't read yet. I've owned it for a few years because I'm terrible about buying books. Not ever actually reading through them. This one called Death and Dying that is a nonfiction book. It's more about coming to terms with. I don't think it's around relatives. I think it's more for people to read. If you had cancer or whatever, and kind of coming to terms with the fact that you're going to die.
Okay.
More accepting it.
Interesting.
Whereas, most people get later in life and they're like, "No, it's too soon. I haven't done this. I haven't done that."
Yeah. It's something I've been thinking about. Turned 40 this year, thinking about bucket list, an actual bucket list. It's nonchalant joke kind of throwing out oh, that's a bucket list thing or whatever.
Right. But
actually getting one, is there anything I really want to do? And is there any reason I'm not making sure I can make it a thing I can do? I mean, we are knocking off one off the list. We are going to Disney this year. Don't tell the kids.
Okay.
Just saying. They don't listen to the podcast. It's it's an adult podcast, but we are doing that this year.
Listen to it sometimes in the car.
It does come on some, yeah. That is the weird thing about the automatic Bluetooth takeover, is it'll just pick up the last thing I was playing, even if it's been hours or days. Yeah. Like, I'll just get in the car and it'll just start playing a thing. Sometimes it won't even play the same thing I was playing before. It's really weird sometimes, the way it picks up, but it does. But yeah, like, that's one of the things, take the kids there. That's on my list of things I like really want to do. Like, I don't know. I'm not a world traveler per se. I have no desire to, like, I would, but it's not like a want. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I'd love to go to Italy, I guess. I'd go, but it's not like I want to go to Italy, right, or I want to go to France, or I want to go back to England again, or I mean, I'd go to Mexico again, but really the only thing that I've ever done in Mexico or would want to do in Mexico, actually I take that back. I would like to go to Mexico again, more specifically to go to some of the like history stuff, the pyramids and shit. Not, you know, but
Mayan ruins.
Right, but the time I went to Mexico, and when I was a kid with my parents or whatever, it's like, you know, some $high beach resort that
didn't really see Mexico.
Right. You know, and so like there was a fucking Senor Frogs in town that we went to, and it's like there was a Senor Frogs in Knoxville at the time. You know? And I got fucking sick off the water like you do in Mexico, like an idiot. Right. But it's just like, you know, like that. I don't want to do that. I don't want to go to some fucking but I do and I don't. Like again, but I can go to a beach resort in the Carolinas, or I can go to a beach resort in Texas and get the same experience, and not have to have a passport for it or whatever.
Right.
But I still haven't got my real ID yet. You got your real ID yet? No. We got till next year. Or they move it back another year.
I still gave meaning to redo my passport. I haven't done that in years.
I don't see. I mean, if you don't have intent to use it,
can you go across? Can you go into Canada and Mexico with real ID?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I know, like 4 or 5 years ago, if not before, they made it to where you had to have a passport to go across the border. Now you could no longer get across with. I mean, I got just your driver's license.
Right. When I went as a kid to Mexico, I didn't have a passport.
Right.
I got my passport when we went to London.
Right. When I went to Niagara Falls years ago, we went to the Canadian side, and they just looked at our state IDs.
Right. Yeah, they might have changed since 2000, since 9/11 shit. I don't know. But I did find that interesting. It's the 20th anniversary this year of 9/11. Yeah. And the Army-Navy game was today, which Max was at it. And I guess he's a Navy fan since he's from the Department of the Navy, even though he's not in the Navy. But which Navy ended up winning that game, which was quite a surprise. Anyway.
They normally lose?
Not normally lose, but Army is a way better team. Army was 8-3, Navy was 3-8 going into the game. Okay. Army was a 7-point favorite. Worst couple bets I've ever done in my life. Anyway, that's a side note. They had a bunch of like 20th anniversary of 9/11 shit, and I'm sitting here watching that, and it's just like, these cadets weren't alive. Like, this is prehistory to them. So most of the players on the field,
cadets, yeah.
Most of the players on the field, at least all the freshmen, sophomores in the academies. You know, any of the kids that are in the academies at all were babies at best. Yeah. But there's at least a couple of classes there that weren't born when that thing happened, and so that's D-Day to them. You know, like I don't know, like that's Vietnam, you know, Gulf of Tonkin incident kind of shit to me and you, because that's stuff that happened, you know, a decade before we were born. But it's like it doesn't make sense in our lifespan because it was before us. Right. And that there's this set of kids out there playing a game, and you know, all the pomp and circumstance that is the Army-Navy game and all that kind of shit. Having a special section of it, remembering the 20-year anniversary of 9/11 and this, that, and the other, and like it just kind of hit me. It's like they weren't even alive. Like, this is prehistory to them. This, like, I was trying to do like, you know, Berlin Wall fell in our lifetime. We were still cold, like we were still in the Cold War when we were born. Right. You know, so like,
yeah, I mean, I still remember being in school with globes that had East and West Germany. And
yeah.
Czechoslovakia.
I remember my sister had a poster she had on her wall for a while that was like the tearing down of the Berlin Wall. It's one of those famous portraits or whatever, people up on the wall breaking chunks off and kind of shit.
Is it David Hasselhoff standing on top?
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Sorry, that's not David Hasselhoff, but you know, it's just weird. Like, I don't know. It's just, I guess, get off my lawn. I'm feeling old about this story. I guess it's just it's odd to me to think about that as something that's happened before people were alive. Right. Like that there are like adults, literal, functional, technically adults. I mean, they can't smoke yet legally or drink yet legally, but technical adults that weren't even alive yet when that went into shape. Speaking of that other podcast in town that I've been listening to, because it's interesting to see how other people look at things that are local to us, and I can't wrap my head around them.
I saw a story about a father and son that do a podcast here in Knoxville.
Yeah, I saw that on the news, and it's like, oh, well, when are you going to do a story about my podcast? Oh, wait, I shit on you guys all the time. You're not going to do a story about me. I did yell at Daniel about
the other podcast you were.
It's called Apostates on the Fringe. It's a leftist, atheist, politics and general pop culture, whatever.
You had mentioned that.
And I mean, they're interesting. Like, what's funny to me is like they're so. I mean, I don't know. Like, there are certain portions that I agree with them on, like the premise of what they're after, but like my libertarian brain, they shit on libertarians all the time, so we're perfectly opposed in general. Like, I agree with them on stuff. Like, they hate on cops all the time. It's like, I hate on cops too. But your solution versus my solution are so opposite. And it's like, you go on and you say, like, they'll say a great thing, and I'm like, yes, that is it. And then they go on to, like, they don't even really get into solutions ever. They just bitch about stuff mostly. But they go on and, like, if they do get into other stuff, it's like, no, that is the wrong way to do it. And so, like, but it's interesting. I think it's worthwhile. Just again, like, it got turned on to me by one of our listeners who's like, like, I'm trying to hear different perspectives on whatever. And they don't stay on local as much as I try to, and we don't do a very good job of it either, but they don't do local much at all. Like, the last episode I listened to was all about the Rittenhouse and Albury trials, which we talked about last week, but they spent like the whole episode on it. Yeah. And, that's not what I want to do with this show. Although we do touch on those topics, I don't want it to be, I want to stay
full national.
Right. I want to stay as local as we can. I forgot where I started this one. Oh, they like to shit on libertarians. No, libertarians are not cool with pedophilia. That's my statement on the record to the Apostates on the Fringe.
I'm sorry
cast.
You felt the need to make that.
They're terrible. Like, their interpretation of what a libertarian is terrible. Like, they're like, it hurts my feelings as someone who leads libertarian.
With any political party, there's a wide spectrum of assumptions.
Right. I agreed, but. Because again, I mean, but it just goes to the point. Like, what reminded me of it is I was joking about there are adults, but not really adults because they can't smoke or drink yet. But there are adults that are in the academy that, that was making that whole joke about 21 being a stupid age, and these ages of consent and these ages of permission kind of things that we do as a country are fairly arbitrary. They really are, for a lot of them, and I think. Pedophilia is not one that you're going to get a lot of libertarians that are going to be like, 12-year-olds should be able to sleep with 50-year-olds. That's fine. You're not going to find many libertarians. And you are going to find libertarians that are going to argue that this weird age number thing that we put up, legally speaking, where it's a fixed number, is odd. It's weird. It's hard to track, because I've made this argument a bunch of different times on the show. It's like we have a 12-year-old in Knox County can go out and get a medical procedure without the permission of their parents. Couple of different ones if we're going to get specific, but we don't have to.
Ears pierced?
No.
You have to be 16.
I think you have to be 16 without the consent of a parent. But like, I mean, you can get a vaccine at 12 in the state of Tennessee without your parents' permission.
You sure?
Mm-hmm. Maybe 14.
You sure?
Yeah. Pretty sure. Are you?
You're pretty sure, or are you sure?
I'm not 100% on what the age is, but it's less than 16. Yes, I'm 100% sure that there's some sort of, I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there is a thing in the books in the state of Tennessee that came up in the topic of conversation because of pandemic stuff, because of these crazy parents that don't want to vaccinate their kids, but the kids want to get the vaccine. They're allowed to go get it without their parents' permission. And another one being, girls, I don't know exactly how Tennessee state law sits on it, but certain states, girls at 15, 16 can get abortions without a parent permission, which I'm not going to push back on that one. That's a weird spot, and I don't know how to, like, abortion in general, I try to stay out of because I don't know how to handle it. I'm not going to get pregnant. I don't know how to deal with that situation, so I'm scared of it, for lack of a better word. But, but 18 you can take on student debt loan, 18 you can get married, 21 you can smoke and drink, Like all these, it's a weird set of numbers that we've just picked on the age of consent for different things. A 20-year-old and a 17-year-old cannot have sex, but an 18-year-old and a 50-year-old can. You know, it's like that kind of shit. Like, it's weird. But suffice to say that, no, I'm not cool with an adult.
I mean, I'd like to think at
by
some
significant
point
years.
There was some wise lawmakers that were like, you know, hate to put a number on this, but we need to put a number on it just to make sure.
I agree, but
someone's like, well, I didn't see anything on the law books. Nothing said I couldn't do it.
I agree, but I think it is illogical to me for it not to be a consistent number. Because the conversation is supposed to be like the mental capacity, the function.
As far as like state to state, I mean that's
state to state, right? No, state to state's great. State to states can have their own law, but even inside the state of Tennessee, there are different numbers for different things, and that doesn't make sense to me.
For different things,
right? If the idea is that you are old enough to make decision X, Y, or Z, whatever the decision is, if you're old enough, you're mentally capable enough to make this decision. Why does it matter what the decision is? If it's you're old enough to smoke a cigarette, you're old enough to drink a beer, you're old enough to have sex with another adult, you're old enough to get an abortion, you're old enough to get vaccine and medical treatment without your parents' consent. How is it logical that number is not the same for all of those things? Because it's not. That's my problem as a libertarian leaning person. Is that doesn't make sense to me that we have this floating number depending on what it is and what the political winds are right now about smoking and drinking and this, that, and the other. Like, why did we change state law to 21 for smoking?
I think the biggest push was to discourage smoking in general.
Then why don't we just ban smoking?
Because that would go over well.
I mean...
no, man, seriously, play that out in your head and explain how that would work.
I don't think that a ban on any substance should exist. Don't come at me with that side of the argument.
Well, you're saying why don't they just
if the point is to get people to quit to make the thing stop, then make it illegal, just like weed and coke and all the other drugs out there. Because it doesn't go over well. I agree. I think the war on drugs is a waste of fucking time and money. But it doesn't change the fact that there's plenty of 15, 16, 17-year-olds out there smoking today, 18, 19, 20-year-olds smoking out there today. Doesn't change that.
Right.
It's some appeasement of some fucking pissed off mom, at best. A group of moms pissed off that they caught their kids smoking in high school. The only logical thing to me is that they said, we want to make it so that no high schooler, even if he's really dumb and failed a year or two and is 19 or 20 and still in high school.
I mean, I wish I would have never started smoking.
I agree. I wish I would have never started smoking either. I don't know that would have made a difference. Yeah, it made it easier that we had friends or older siblings that were 18 that could go buy for us. Or we became the 18-year-olds as I get. You didn't turn 18 until after we graduated. I turned 18 earlier first semester.
All right.
So I was buying cigarettes for everybody. That's the only reason I can see on why they really pushed that number up is to get it so that you didn't have seniors in high school that could buy for the sophomores and freshmen. Awesome. But hell, I started smoking when I was fucking 13.
Right.
And anyway, regardless, the point of the story is, why is that number different? The number should be the same for all things. If you are a functionally adult enough to make a decision about medical decisions about your body, smoking, drinking should fall under the same category. Why those numbers shouldn't be different. That's my problem with it as a libertarian.
You keep going back to this medical decision. So you think giving someone at 14, 15 the decision to go and get a vaccine for whatever it is, I'm assuming you're making just reference to the whole COVID thing.
No, it's prior. This existed prior to. It was brought up again because of COVID, but it's been in the books for years.
Okay. How do you equate that to smoking?
I mean, so you're okay. So the assumption is,
if I'm old enough to go and ask for a vaccine, I should be old enough to smoke.
If you're old enough to make decisions about your body and your health, yes, you're old enough to make decisions about your body and your health. It shouldn't matter whether it's pro or con for your body. If you are old enough to make decisions about your body, then you should be old enough to make decisions about your body. It doesn't matter what the thing is. That's my point. It shouldn't be whether it's a socially accepted good or bad.
So you want us to pick a number just to have that be the age to have the choice to do anything that has to do with your body?
It doesn't make sense to not. Yes, I believe that is what I'm trying to get at. It doesn't make sense that it should be a different number. Because again, okay, so let's shift it up a little bit. 18 to 21 now. At 18, you can sign up for the military. You can take out you can get married. You can make the best, worst decision of your life depending on who you decide to marry. Right. You can take on insurmountable debt.
Right.
You can do all these different things.
Right. Same arguments we've heard.
Go on. So you can make decisions about your life, and that can affect you for the rest of your life. But you can't smoke a cigarette. You can't drink a beer. In legal states, you can't smoke some weed. It doesn't make sense to me. That's all I'm saying, is that it does. If you're old enough to make a decision about your life and your body, it should be the same number. It doesn't make sense that it's a different number. I agree that it's going to be an arbitrary number no matter what it is, but it should be the same number. That's all my point is.
Okay. All right. I see what you're saying.
I mean, it's not about what the thing is you're allowed to do. It's the inconsistency in philosophy to say that you're old enough to make this decision, but not that one, where both of them are affecting your body and your life and whatever for the rest of your life.
Should we move the draft up to 21?
I mean, I would like to not have drafts, but I don't know. Do girls get draft cards yet?
No idea.
I don't think they do. Nobody cares to talk about that one, but I don't believe they do.
Not to my knowledge. I don't think so.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I wish we didn't have draft cards, but I mean, I don't know. It should be 12, I guess. If we're involved, again, that's what I'm saying. It's like, pick which one you want to do, and I'm good with it. Sort of. I think 21's a little bit old, but, pick which one of the ones that we kind of already have on the books. Like 16 for everything. 16, you can drive a car, you can smoke weed, you can drink a beer, you can smoke cigarettes, you can get an abortion, you can get your own medicine and doctor and deal with your own doctor kind of shit. You can go to war, you can do all that shit. 16, I think, is probably the easy number. I mean, 25 is really when your brain actually starts to actually solidify into the thing it's going to be for the rest of the time.
16, go to big boy jail too.
I mean, that's another one I didn't bring up in the whole fucking argument. I mean, it's weird, but I mean, sometimes that one's a separate whole subcategory for me, because sometimes it is. 16 sometimes is old enough to go to big boy jail.
Right.
Depends on who you are, what you did, and this right. Because that's a whole separate thing. Again, and weirdness is that it's not even a fixed number in the legal system. It just floats around depending on the judge's mood today.
I was it Central Park 5? I think one of those kids was 14 and went to regular jail. Could be wrong. He may have done a couple of years in juvie until he was like 16 and then went to big boy jail.
I don't know. I'm just saying,
prison. Sorry, not jail. Prison.
Yeah.
On the age thing, I think I was just reading in New Zealand, I think they passed a law or proposed a law that they're going to incrementally raise the age of smoking. Because apparently right now it's 14. But I guess like here in 4 years they're going to raise it to 18. And then 4 more years, raise it to 20. And it's just going to keep going up. And the article kind of joked about it. And it was a serious article. It was like, eventually there's going to be like 85-year-olds or whatever that aren't old enough to buy cigarettes.
I mean, the assumption...
But they were basically just trying to phase it out.
Right.
But it's also a socialized healthcare system to where the country is literally paying for these people.
Right, and the real fun thing the fun thing to watch will be is how much black market cigarettes come on.
That's what's going on in Europe right now.
I mean, and again, it's like...
That's more just like the cost of cigarettes in general.
But I think this is one of the games...
We have that issue here in the U.S. You have people selling things that
lose cigarettes and getting shot by the cops. Sorry.
Loose cigarettes. I'm not going to just packs that don't have like the stamps or whatever.
Right. Or going to other states.
Untaxed cigarettes.
Right. Going to other states that have different taxes and bringing them across state lines, which is illegal.
Well, this is outside of that.
I'm just saying there's different ways to do the black market thing, and that being one of them, this being one of them. But
right. Buy them in North Carolina, I drive them up to New York sell them for 3 times the price.
Right. Right. You buy them in North Carolina for $5-6 a pack, and you go to New York and you can sell them for $10, and they're half as much as they are at the fucking bodega.
Right. That was one thing when I went into the one time I went to Canada. That was one thing they asked us, like everybody individually, like, all right, where are you from? We're like, United States. They're like, do you have any tobacco or alcohol? We're like, nope. I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I remember like the one time we went to New York for a wedding, bought a pack of cigarettes in the city. It was $11, and this was back in maybe 2010 or earlier. I want to say they were well under $5 here a pack.
Yeah.
So it was at least twice as much a pack there than it was here. And so, fuck yeah. I mean,
I've seen advertisements for companies I'd never heard of. I mean, maybe they're new companies, or maybe it was just a new generic, but
Tahoes.
like American Bison.
Yeah.
It looks awfully like American Spirits. It says American Bison.
But I mean, it's like, and again, but the libertarian argument in the story is all you're doing is opening black markets. You're going to open up a legal trade because obviously there's demand for smoking. And there's a demand for smoking that exists beyond the addictive factor of cigarettes. It just does. Now, part of the problem is the industrialization of the cigarette making process and how dirty and extra chemical filled the cigarettes have been for all the different stuff that they want to do to make it more addictive and blah, 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 blah. There are problems with that. I'm not saying that's... I'm not a big R.J. Reynolds fan as far as their business activities and caring for their customers and stuff like that, but there's a demand for smoking. It's just I feel like it's a natural demand of human beings. I think it's one of those things that exists inside human beings innately. Because I don't care who you are, smoking looks cool. Smoking looks cool. Like winter, like I can't remember a time when it's cold outside and you can see your breath that I don't see kids today.
Right.
Standing outside waiting for the bus at school. Trying to blow smoke rings with their hot breath,
right?
Even though they're not smoking, there's something that is innately cool about smoking, and it's not going away. Whether they're $50 a pack, or it's full on black market, just like weed has been for the last 50 years, it's going to happen. Which is another part that I find wholly hilarious about the process is having watching as weed becomes legal. While smoking gets more illegal. Like, I found that a fun little process. Like, it's just interesting philosophically to me that smoking this one thing is getting more legal as time passes and more okay as time passes. But smoking this other thing is getting less.
Yeah.
Now, again, the health aspect of it is completely different. But, interesting nonetheless. But to go to the moral of the story is, no, I don't want a 45-year-old man fucking a 12-year-old girl. I'm not cool with that. I don't think that should be legal.
I'm glad you hammered that point in.
I just want to make that point clear, and I would feel comfortable in saying that you're going to be hard pressed to find a real libertarian that thinks that's okay. Now you're going to find a lot of libertarians that have weird arguments about age consent and that kind of shit, and they're not weird arguments. It's a logical conundrum that we just went down for the last 20 minutes or whatever.
Some people just like to run down that rabbit hole of if you allow this and then you're automatically allowing in its worst case scenario.
Right. And the other thing too is like as this conversation again, I feel like I should have made you listen to it as homework, but as I listen to it goes, apparently Al on the show is non-binary or whatever, and there was this whole kind of argument or just conversation about one of the other hosts was having an issue with a coworker because they were trying to explain this whole non-binary thing, and the coworkers just got angry and didn't want to fucking deal with it. It's a phase and this, that, and the other, and it's like, so they go at length in explaining, that, non-binary is a thing. We have weird chromosomal things. It's not just XX and XY. There's plenty of data out there that shows that there's weird, not weird, I apologize, but there's a lot of nuance and complication to what gender and stuff is through just the genetic process and stuff like that, and all this different stuff. And that there are people who are naturally in a male body who feel like they're female or vice versa or whatever. Right. And then they go on to shit on a group of people that is, I think it's called MAPS, some like mature adults, pedophiles, sex or something like that. It's some group that's out there that exists that are advocating for lowering the legal age of consent or whatever, basically. And about how they
NAMBLA,
right? But the idea that we are supposed to go on and accept that gender is complicated, but we can't accept that human sexuality is complicated and that there are older people who have strong attractions to things that are younger than they should. It's like, no, that's a real thing. And you're asking us to be super comfortable and okay with this one thing that's complicated and different and nuanced, but this one is fucked up. Right. Again, it's not a moral dilemma it's not a morals thing that I'm trying to say here, because I agree that there are complications and this one is kind of problematic if they're acting on said urges. But if some dude's out there and he's attracted to 12-year-olds, okay, that sucks, man. I hate that for you. Just find a 20-year-old that looks really young and do the best you can with it. Don't go fuck 12-year-olds. That's fucked up.
All right.
But again, the philosophical consistency is what I was having a problem with, in that there's a complicated thing that's part of humanity that you're asking us to accept without question. But this other complicated thing that's part of humanity, which is adult males that want to fuck kids, whether they're male or female kids, is a thing that's been around for as long as humanity's been around. Now, we're not accepting that they act upon it, but we're accepting that it's a thing, right? No, it's fucked up and they should be killed, I think is what, again, this is me paraphrasing them as best I can remember. These people need to be off on the planet. It's like, again, I'm not okay with pedophiles. I'm not promoting that right now. I just have a hard time with the inconsistency at play. And that's what I'm struggling with in the conversation. That's what confuses me. And it's like, again, the libertarian in me says, I don't care what you are or what you think you are or what you feel like you are. You be you. Have a good time with it. Go.
Heard an interesting interview with who was a person born a man, but literally throughout the day, they would kind of switch back between male and female.
Yeah. Now, did this person get mad when you misgendered them?
How they identified.
That's one of the things. That's one of the things to me that I get defensive about as a cis male.
You get defensive about them being defensive about it.
Right, because when I see a person who has feminine physique to them, and I reference them as a female, and you tell me I'm wrong, and be like, "What? It looks like a girl," and then you go on this big, argument about how I'm insensitive or something like that. I'm gonna get a little pissy about it. It's like, sorry, it looked like a girl. I wasn't trying to be a dick about it, but that looked like a girl, so I referred to that as a girl. Like this whole premise that we're supposed to know what your pronouns are without meeting you first. Now I agree. If if you have a pronoun preference, I'll do my best if I know it. But if I don't know it, I'm not going to feel bad for being wrong.
Right.
And for anyone to demand otherwise is fucked up. That's just fucked up. I don't know how else to say it.
I mean, it's kind of a weird subject. I mean, there's been professors that have straight up refused their students, hey, I want you to call me this.
Well, that's the Jordan Peterson thing.
Right. I guess, yeah. Now, my whole take on it is whatever. I'll call you whatever the fuck you want. Just tell me what the hell the fuck you want me to address you.
Right, but Jordan Peterson's whole thing is that that's where his kind of thing started, was because in his analysis of it, because he's a fucking psych guy anyway, he's a psychologist, evolutionary psychologist.
I was wondering, yeah. I finally started listening to him. I kept seeing his face pop up, and his voice did not match.
He is, yeah. He doesn't. I agree.
I assumed his face would look like. I think he has cancer.
No, he just got out of rehab. He got heavy.
Somebody's talking about some kind of health
his wife
issues.
does.
And I thought I saw older pictures of him, and he had lost a bunch of weight. So
him and his daughter both have some sort of immuno disorder, and they've gone full carnivore. They all eat nothing but steak.
I think I did see.
And he's talked about that. But his wife, I believe, his wife had cancer, and through that whole process, he got into Zoloft's or something like that, and went off the deep end on Zoloft's, and she got better. He got continuously worse and went into rehab for a while. Yeah. But his whole thing was, he's like, sure, he's like, I have no issue with it, but when you're putting on a show with it, I'm not gonna play ball. When we start class or whatever, and I misgender you, and I, whatever, it's not that I'm trying to intentionally misgender with you, but when you turn it into a show and it's now a battle of wills, I'm not gonna fold to it because you're trying to put it on a show and take over my classroom. It's I don't care. It's I've got plenty of people that I've had and worked with and this, that, and the other in my life that are some sort of whatever, and I call them what they ask me to call them. It's not a problem but it's It's the same kind of, his argument's the same kind of argument that I was just saying, and that it's like, I'm not gonna be made to feel like I'm a bad person for being wrong on the societal norm of the conversation. Now, when I'm corrected and I continue to do it to be a dick, then I'm an asshole. You're just an asshole at that point. That's just like calling somebody Bob when their name is John, and you know their name's John, but you keep calling him Bob because you're a dick.
All right.
Like it doesn't matter what the gender is. You're just being an asshole to be an asshole.
I don't care if you look like a John. You're Bob.
Right. But
I don't care if you wear a red shirt today. You're still Bob, you son of a bitch.
Right. You're still Bob in the pink shirt. I'm just saying, like, that's just that, but that's the Peterson thing in general, is that he's just like, I get it. And he doesn't question the validity of the argument. It's the turning into the politics and social show that it's become is where he pushes back. And his real big thing was Canada, because he's from Canada.
Right.
Canada
if you couldn't tell by his voice.
Right. But Canada is putting in some sort of, had put on the books some sort of compelled speech law, and that it became a crime to misgender somebody. Huh. And so his whole thing was, hey, that's a problem. Like, just on the free speech concept and all the different stuff. And it's Canada, it's not the United States. Their free speech laws are different than ours and this, that, and there. It's like, but that's a problem for us as a society if you're going to make it illegal for me to accidentally call her a him. And that's like almost like the hate crime level is like the way the whole thing kind of broke down. And that's where he blew up on the international stage, I guess, on the North American stage. As far as that, but it was his whole fight. I think it was like, I can't remember what the name of the law was, but it was essentially a compelled speech law, and that's where he really got active and loud, and that's when the cancel, mob came after him, and he did what he does. Which I like Jordan Peterson a lot, obviously. Like, I'm a fan. I've read his book.
I've watched some of his stuff. I agree with him on some points.
I mean, I don't think
not
he's
so much his take on
perfect,
others.
but
nobody is.
I mean, he's fun to talk to. He's fun to talk to. I wish I could talk to him, but he's fun to listen to. He's interesting. He makes you think about stuff. Like, he's like, I don't think I could handle talking to him. I think I would cry. I would just stop. Like, my brain would stop working, and I would cry, and I would break down.
Yeah, I mean, looking at him, like, I was like, man, that guy just looks like a really, like, mean son of a bitch.
Well, it's funny, like,
voice, he's got this hardcore Canadian accent.
He was on Rogan once, and he was talking about, like, Rogan was like, man, you really went after the suits and stuff, man. He's like, he started doing these speaking tours and doing this different stuff, and he's like, I made the decision. It's like, I want to do this. I'm gonna do it right, and I'm gonna look my best. I'm gonna present myself as best I can. Blah 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 blah. And so I go out and I buy nice suits and all this kind of stuff, and it's like he the way he thinks out himself is one of the things that I find really interesting about him. Like, he really thinks out, like, if I'm going to be,
well, maybe he's a psychologist, he knows that,
right? This, yeah, also true.
Because I went back and listened to cool podcast I listened to. They got an episode about placebo. I knew I'd listened to it years before and really liked that episode. Wanted to go back and re-listen to it. And one of the main people on the show, his dad is an actual doctor, I think, in Nashville. But he went and visited him for a day. Didn't say, like, why he was visiting with him, why he was interviewing him. But before, I guess his dad's has been a general practitioner for years, and doesn't see that many patients, but he's still, like, once or twice a week, he still has patients that he goes and sees. That he'll put on a nice, clean, crisp, like, kind of quote-unquote stereotypical, like, white doctor's coat.
Right.
And it does make a difference.
Right.
They've done, like, many studies, of even just, like, changing the name tag of, like, having someone come in that says, like, head of oncology department versus, like, intern.
Right.
And how that person, like, perceives the same information that's given to them. They're like, oh, well, the head of oncology is telling me this, and versus, like, oh, the intern is telling me this. Right.
Yeah, brains are funky.
Yeah.
Brains are real funky. I get it. I think it's I think that goes, like, a lot of that stuff is that as we have gotten smarter about how we work, the more we're getting manipulated by it. I think that's one of the things that's at play in the broad spectrum of things, in the shit we watch.
It is kind of a catch-22.
Yeah. The better we understand it, the cooler it is, but also the worse it is at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, like, most ad agencies, they have social psychologists
top
on
level
payroll. Yeah.
high level things.
Like how many times do I need to show this word? Like where do I need to put it on the screen?
Yeah, that's one of the things on Facebook that's been floating around that's really crazy. It's like it's a picture, and it's like you read this first. Like it says, like you read this first, and it's like different size fonts and stuff.
Yeah,
it says you read this first, you read this second, and you read this third.
I've seen those,
and I've done it, and I was like, how did they know I was going to do that? And it's like they just know how your eye follows and works and shit like that. Do you see the new Twitter CEO thing and all?
Maybe not. There was something they were changing. I know. Was it Twitter? No, it was like Instagram or Snapchat. It was one of the major ones that came out, and they were.
You're so old.
I know. Well, no, I was trying to remember what the story was, but they basically started like putting in there like a kind of you should take a break type thing.
Oh yeah, no, that's not.
I think it was Snapchat or Instagram.
No, the new CEO of Twitter, who's gone on record prior to it, it's like, we're under no obligation to follow the First Amendment. It's like it's a factual statement. Okay, whatever.
He stepped down. You about Jack Dorsey?
No, the new guy, the guy that replaced Jack Dorsey. Okay. He's the guy that's been on. Because Jack Dorsey's been on record as being right. He's been on record of wanting to be. Like he was on Rogan a couple times, and one of the times on Rogan he was talking about how he's thinking about making splitting Twitter and having a full Wild West Twitter that is 100% no touchy, like no moderation, nothing. It just goes, and then the more moderated and censored, whatever word you want to call it, version of Twitter for regular people kind of thing. Anyway, another point. The new guy, he not he per se, but he put some new policy stuff in place, and this week they dropped the Pelosi Portfolio Watch account, and they also banned the Maxwell Trial Tracker account. And it's just kind of two weird random, accounts to just ban out of the blue. Essentially, was the story as it was presented to me. It's like just out of the blue, they put this new policy in place, send out your new end user license agreements, but nobody agrees. Everybody checks okay. And then these two accounts get banned, probably among dozens or thousands of others. But these two specifically, because we talked about it before, the Pelosi Portfolio Tracker kind of thing.
Right.
Like she does, I'm sorry, not her. She doesn't actually trade because she can't. Her husband does really well on the stock market. And so people started tracking it and, going along with it. And whenever Pelosi bought something, they would buy it too. But that one got banned for some reason. It's public information.
That's what I was saying before. Those people are following it. They're way behind the times.
It's fine, but that doesn't change the why would you ban
the stock market, that makes a hell of a difference.
I agree, but why would you ban that account?
Maybe because
it's not false information. It's not misleading information. It's factual information. The current Speaker of the House, because she is obligated by the job to disclose what trade she does, when, and how much.
Right.
There's a Twitter account that takes those disclosures and just puts them on their page. It's just a weird. It's weird to me. Like I think
not knowing about it, I would guess that maybe this wasn't an actual factual representation of it. I don't know if it was a true copy and paste to this what was made.
I mean that's how it was presented. I don't know if it's. I didn't go verify it with her.
I think there's more because I've heard of many of things that are following multiple politicians and their stock trading. There was a number that got caught right after coronavirus broke, a year and a half ago.
Both sides of the aisle,
yeah, both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, I mean, they do.
So I'm saying that this one account, there's not one account that's putting out Pelosi stuff. There's multiple people that are putting out multiple things on multiple.
I agree, but again, it doesn't answer the why'd you ban them, even if they're wrong.
That's what I'm saying. I'm guessing. Me in that mindset that I'm guessing that this one account was not putting out factual things.
Even if they were wrong, why would you ban them? I mean,
it's freedom of speech, but at the same time, it's just disseminating misinformation.
Okay.
Yes or no?
I don't know. I mean, intent becomes involved in the conversation, whether they meant to do it or whether there was some nefarious reason for it.
If they're allowed to do misinformation on stock trades, they could be paid by Acme Corporation to say like, "Hey, Pelosi's been buying Acme."
So literally, so the problem is that an elected official's corruption, somebody following an elected official's corruption, being corrupted, is bad. Like that's the problem. Is that again, a corruption is bad either way. I guess yes, true. Twitter has no obligation to, but your argument is that they have put it upon themselves to be the arbiters of truth in this case, and that if an account who is following a corrupt politician is corrupted on their own, we need to do something about it. And I guess that tracks logically.
No, I'm saying this was a corrupt person following, if you want to call him a corrupt politician or whatever. I'm saying they banned him because this was a fake account putting out fake information about an issue, yes, of, I wouldn't call it insider trading, but some of them in things with the coronavirus were doing insider trading.
Right. I don't know that Pelosi specifically worked coronavirus insider stuff, but that's the general theme of most people that have followed her trades or her husband's trades have been, it's stuff that she has oversight over from her position, not exclusively, but
I mean, as Speaker of the House, that's a very broad blanket that you could say you have control over many of things.
Yes. But like stuff, I mean, there's some, I can't remember, I'd have to go find it again.
That's why they should divest.
There are some specifics that, like, there's some specifically large sum trades that her husband made between when there was a classified briefing and when that information came to the public, that the companies that the investments came from or took from or went to were directly impacted by whatever the public thing that came out was.
Right.
And I agree. There needs to be some solution to their, I mean, to try to offset some of their corruptibility, because it's just an easily, I mean, you know, I don't hate them for it. I mean, realistically, it's like I'm sitting here on a congressional subcommittee on this sector of the economy, and I get news from the intelligence group or whatever that this is going to happen, and that companies that I own stock in are going to be hard affected by that. I'm going to sell those stocks. Why wouldn't I sell those stocks? I'm not supposed to sell those stocks because I have special knowledge, but at the same time, it's like, this is my money that's going to be affected by, it's not a policy thing that I'm making. It's just, this thing is happening. Like, you know, there's some coup in Venezuela. It's going to affect oil prices, and I owe a bunch of money. I have a bunch of stocks in some oil companies that are going to be affected by it. I want to get in or out of them because I know it's going to change by this coup that's happening over here. Not even that I have a policy decision that changes the value. It's just that I have the knowledge of it before it's available to the public.
Right.
And again, it's fucked up and it's bullshit, but it's like, it's a natural instinct. I'm not going to say I wouldn't do it if I was sitting there.
I know, but at the same time, to play the devil's advocate of it, I would assume people in that position and many wealthy people do it smartly and do it without their fingerprints on it.
Well, I mean, it goes into, yeah, but it also goes into like,
where they have their offshore accounts buying these things.
You know, it goes into the more local example. My day job started expanding into some other avenues. And they are not expanding a little further into said avenue because the word on the street that they hear from their legals and stuff like that is that the state of Tennessee is going to change some of their laws on a certain thing, and they don't want to invest a bunch of money into a certain thing, knowing that potentially come 1st of July, it's going to be banned for use in the state. And it's like, well, that's not fair that they have that knowledge because they have those lawyers or something like that.
All right.
You know, and it's like, I get it. And again, like, I 100% understand it. And accidentally we have that knowledge because it affects us too. And I'm trying to figure out how to prepare for that. I don't know that it's actually going to happen. We don't know this, that, and the other yet, but at least the rumor mill has started. And what does that do?
Gets people talking.
Right. But, you know, I act upon that with my insider knowledge, for lack of a better word. And it's like, I don't know. feel like I have to. But, you know, just like my boss feels like he has to. He has a ton of employees to take care of. He doesn't want to spend a bunch of money on a thing that might cost him issues. Or you have to lay people off, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, I don't know. Random episode. All over the map. I like it.
Tis.
Christmas stuff's going on? I don't know.
Go where the mind takes us.
It's true.
There was a hilarious... Trevor know Daily Show. There was a Daily Show thing about the Fox... Did you hear about the Fox News Christmas tree, I guess, outside in New York? Somebody set it on fire and burned part of it down?
I did.
They were showing clips
of
like
whatever McCain thing? Oh.
Huh?
The McCain, not John McCain, he's dead, but
his daughter?
Yeah.
No.
She made a statement, and somebody had a good tweet.
Oh. Yeah, this was showing clips of some of the prominent Fox News people that were really funny. One woman came on and was like, you know, this is a sign of Jesus and Hanukkah.
I did hear about that, yeah.
I was like, wait, what? The Christmas tree has nothing to do with Jesus or Hanukkah. But nice try.
Going back, that reminded me going way back into the Jussie Smollett conversation we were having.
Yeah.
Did you hear about the Don Lemon part of that?
No.
Apparently Don Lemon had used some of his, because this is something that CNN does apparently, had used some of his contacts in Chicago PD to notify Jussie Smollett, because they were buddies, that the cops weren't buying his story. And apparently that's when he stopped talking to the cops as much.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. That just reminded me of that, because you have the whole Cuomo thing that just happened, and now Don Lemon, CNN's having problems.
Yeah, there's more things coming out about Cuomo. I think there's more women that are coming out of the woodworks.
Yeah.
Accusing him.
Well, which Cuomo? Because I was talking about Chris. You were talking about Andrew.
Yeah, I'm talking about Andrew.
Yeah. I was talking about Chris, the journalist. Yeah. He got fired. We'll see. See what happens to him next. He'll take over Jen Psaki's position or something like that.
I don't think so.
No, he's not tight with Biden, but
he's never a good anchor anyway.
I mean, he had CNN's most popular show for a while.
Did he really?
Yeah. And so, like, that's one of the conversations that I've been hearing word here and there about, is like, who's going to replace him. And Don Lemon was one of the people in the conversation. And it's like, well, Don Lemon was doing the same shit. Not exactly the same shit, but some of the same shit.
Well, I mean, to an extent, when you get to that level, you are friends with more popular people, I guess.
But it is literally your job to talk about them, not to help them through their situations.
Oh, right. I agree.
And so when, instead of saying, hey, I got some news from Chicago PD saying that they're not really buying this Jussie Smollett story. No, that's not what Don Lemon says on the show. He doesn't say shit about it on the show, but he tells Jussie personally that they're not really buying the story. And it's like, well, why? Because you're buddies with him?
So if I was in Smollett's decision and you were in Don Lemon's position, would you do the same for me?
I don't think... I doubt that they're the same level of buddies that you and I are.
True.
But if nothing else, because Don Lemon did do a number of stories about the situation and about how terrible it was and this homophobic racial injustice that had happened to Mr. Smollett or whatever. Like, he ran that story.
Because that was the original story. I don't... Did they run correction stories after that?
I mean, now they are, I guess.
I don't think now. This was happening like 3 years ago, I think it is now.
I'm just saying, I don't recall when Don Lemon came on and said, hey, I got some... I was talking to...
Well, no, I don't think he came out and was
saying,
like, hey, I told Jussie Smollett that, you should probably go ahead and shut your mouth because they're not buying your story. Right.
But I guess the argument would be is if you and I were in a similar situation and I had made contact with you about a thing going on, I'd still report the story. I still say that...
I don't think there was anybody that didn't report the story after the story changed.
But I think that's... But I think that Don Lemon's move was prior to the story changing. That was the beginning of the story change. He could have been the exclusive on the story change. Instead, he helped his buddy and then let the other part of the media pick up the story change, and then maybe he talked about it then. My point is that if you and I, if you and I were in a similar situation, it would have been, I think the appropriate journalist move would have been, not that I'm going to pretend like I'm a journalist anyway, but the appropriate journalist move would have been,
I guess the real question
to run that story immediately.
Why did Don Lemon know that the cops weren't buying his story?
Because he had some source in
before
Chicago
Jesse
PD.
Smollett, however you pronounce his last name, pardon.
I mean, because
wasn't able to pick that up from the cop questioning him.
Because I'm assuming Don Lemon and or CNN has a network of sources that they use, including people inside of Chicago PD. Possibly. That he was probably, it could have essentially started as a Don Lemon reaches out to a source they have in Chicago's police department, says, "Hey, what's going on with the story? We're going to run a story about it. What's happening with the Smollett case? You have like it could have started literally as, hey, you're on the Chicago PD, and I say
something simple is texting in like, there's some things that don't really quite add up.
I mean, right, but that's what I'm saying is that, but it could have been Don Lemon reaching out to Chicago PD and saying, hey, what's going on with this? Do you have any suspects? Do you have any this? Do you have any that? And the reply being, well, something's not quite right about this story. You know, he's telling us X, Y, and Z, and we're not finding where these things line up correctly. And that's when Don Lemon texts him and says, hey, they're not believing your shit, but then doesn't run the story about how, hey, I was talking to, I reached out to some of my sources, and my sources are saying that this Smollett story may be a hoax. Like, that would be the proper way to run that if you're a journalist. Sucks that it's your buddy. But, same thing with the Chris Cuomo thing is that, you don't get to play the good times with the insider knowledge that you have because it's your brother and then pretend like he doesn't exist when the shit hits the fan. It's your job to go up there and run the story. You don't have to do the research on the story. You're the fucking anchor anyway.
Right. I heard a really interesting, back-to-back. It was, him doing a closing of his show or whatever. And then, literally, the first story that, the next segment they went into was about Andrew Cuomo.
Right. It's that's what I'm saying. It's that easy as you say, okay. I mean, the Chris Cuomo one's way worse, because he was actually involved in trying to smear some of the girls and, telling one of Andrew's assistants to delete this text message or delete this text thread because we've been talking too much about things that people don't need to know about. Make sure you delete this thread after we're done.
Just kind of shit. Flag to them. It was like, no, I'm going to save this just because you just told me to delete it.
Exactly. But it's like that kind of shit. Chris Cuomo's is way worse, but it's still you're the most popular news hour on the network that you're in, and you've spent hours and hours about how great your brother's been with pandemic stuff and this, that, and the other. Well, accusations come out. You're obligated to cover that.
I mean, that was really a sad turn of events because I did appreciate how he was forefront with the coronavirus.
Okay. What do you mean by how he was forefront?
And now he was out doing press conferences every day, letting people know what was going on. It reminded me of the Jacinda, I don't recall her last name, the Prime Minister of New Zealand.
But there's no issue with the policies that he put in place for his state, even though he's having good press conferences.
Are you referencing the retirement facility?
I mean, that's one of the confusing ones. Yeah, is that not right? I could be wrong on it.
Yes, that was fucked up.
Okay.
I'm talking about his actual how he was out there every day, actually talking to the people and let them know what was going on.
Okay. But while literally shoving people back into places, I'm confused. So he put on a good face? I really don't get that.
Yeah, I guess. I appreciate him putting on a good face for it. Sure.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand. Damn.
Because I agree. If he was the one in charge, he has to take responsibility for what happens in the state. But I don't think it was, could be wrong, I don't think it was his specific decision to say, let's all send doctors or the patients back to the elder facilities.
That's a fair statement. I don't know. I mean, it's under state of emergency. There were a bunch of executive orders going around from all the different governors of all the different states. I don't know if that was under an executive order, if that was something that was legislatively done.
All right. I mean, going back
I would lean to it was probably an executive order.
Iran-Contra, I mean, Reagan actually came out and said, hey, this happened under me. I take full responsibility for it.
I mean, that's something our politicians don't do anymore, period.
That's very true.
I mean, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a more recent one where somebody's like, yeah, I fucked that one up.
That's interesting. I'm trying to remember. I think it was either Radio Lab or This American Life, one of the podcasts that I used to listen to a lot more, where they talked about that. And I want to say it was somebody was running up against Dukakis for the Democratic primary at the time, I guess in like 88. And he was doing great until a story came out that he had a mistress. And apparently they talked to a bunch of reporters around that time that up until that point, it was kind of status quo that
you didn't report that shit.
Yeah, you don't delve into politicians' personal lives or whatever. And that's one thing that's kind of gotten more to the forefront. People want to know what else goes on in their personal life, not just what happens. I
mean, we don't run they don't run on policy anymore anywhere anyway. So,
right.
I mean, whether it's a reaction to or it started the game or whatever, it's that person. Yeah, I think that's a weird move that we've had. I mean, that was a Kennedy thing.
They said it was like kind of a weird transition. Yeah, there was always kind of the rumors, but nobody reported on it.
Right. And it was like, it was a known secret, I think is the phrase. It's like, it was a known secret. Everybody knew it, but nobody reported on it because that was not important.
Like, JFK and Marilyn Monroe? Ooh.
Right. It's a juicy headline.
Right.
But, I mean, it goes into a lot of different things with the way the media works now. Clickbaity shit. And it's like...
Well, and the access to that information is easier to find.
True. I think it's a weird world we're living in. I don't know how to, I don't know.
That's that one article I sent you about Radiohead. They kind of talked about it, how when those two albums came out, how we were already at a point in technology and personal life where technology was moving faster than we were able to kind of catch up and kind of adapt to it, and that was almost 15, almost 20 years ago now.
Yeah, I didn't actually read the article. I'm sorry.
Oh, I don't blame you for not reading it. I think it was a long article, and I think it went into an actual interview, but it was interesting, a little blurb kind of talking about the new re-release of that double album, but kind of going back to that time frame of when that album was written and how it still applies today in that kind of theme of technology moving faster than we're getting used to. And I think I've mentioned it before. I mean, I think they say, a lot of technology, pretty much every 6 months, almost doubles.
Right. Yeah, I mean it's
compounded upon itself, and we as the general public are still trying to catch up with what we can do. What now? We got what?
Yeah. I mean, it's
nanobots. What?
I mean, like once a year, I have a weekend where I just kind of sit down and kind of update everything and try to reorganize everything in a way that I function and understand it in the new version of everything. Everything adjusts. And it's crazy. I mean, it's just little shit. It's just we ordered Olive Garden the other day, and it's you got to go through the app, and you got to do it this way, and you got to do that. And it's can I just call somebody and say, hey, I want this to eat,
right?
And here's my money. And you don't need my email and my phone number, and I don't have to go through this weird thing.
I want to go to a third party.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's cool and it sucks. It's a weird spot, but it's
I don't want to accept your cookies just to buy a dinner.
Well, I mean, again, it's one of those Rogan references. It's he had one of his specials 3 or 4 specials ago. He has this whole bit about, there are people. Well, I guess we're right on the edge of it anymore, but your grandparents. My last grandparent just died this year. There was a period in her life where cars were rare. Yeah. Where a TV in a house, what? TV, what? The radio was the thing, all that kind of different stuff. And it's not that long ago. we're this many, we're literally 2 generations from what you and I at this point in our lives, the kids even worse, but would consider like the Stone Age.
Right.
And it's barely 2 generations. We're the last generation alive that lived without internet. Like there's a period of our lives where the internet really didn't exist.
Right. Half of our lives.
Yeah. But forget internet, but like high speed internet. My kids have never existed in a world that didn't stream.
Right.
And you could watch
that old
yeah. And it's like,
I'll pick up the phone. Oh, you just knocked me off the internet.
Right. And it's like
I was halfway through downloading a picture
of some porn. But it's just like those kinds of things. And it's like it's a weird thing as a parent, and I'm sure it's a weird thing as a teacher too. And we're trying to balance all these things because like that's one of the struggles I have as a parent, because they're doing things in different ways. They have all this technology that they're using in school to teach. That I understand the thing they're teaching. I just don't understand how they're teaching it.
Right. And
so for me to assist in the education process, and I can get conspiratorial and say that this is a evil plot of the state, that they're trying to parent my kids for me because they think I'm too stupid to parent them myself. That's not what I'm getting into right now. But that there is this process is so fast that how do I assist in just educating my kid? Like in forget the conspiratorial side of it, just I'm trying to help my kid understand this concept. And I understand this concept well. Multiplication, like basic multiplication or whatever. It's like, I understand this concept well, but the way they're teaching it now.
Right. I think I saw long division done differently than what I learned
it's impossible. Like, I don't get it. Like, there's lines and boxes and all this weird shit. And it's like, I don't understand it. And I want to help. And it's like, I'm on board with the idea that there are different ways to do it. But if I teach my kid to do it the way that I was taught to do it, and he can do it, is that a problem? Because he's not showing the work the right way? And that's where I struggle with it. Because it's like, I want to jump in there and be like, you know what, forget all that. Just forget it. Do the little up and across, the number here, the number there. And then you do this and this and this like that. That's like how I remember doing division.
Long division, yeah.
Yeah, regular long division. It's like, I want to teach you to do it this way.
Here's the remainder, yeah.
Right. And then you add a decimal point, and then you do it again and again and again. And once you get like to 5, you can quit and put a line or whatever. Right. But but again, like that makes sense to me. And it's like, I want to help teach you this thing, but I can't teach it the way that they're teaching it. And it's like, I don't know. Again, part of it being conspiratorial, weird-minded that I have, but part of it just being, as a parent, I want to help, but I can't help in this way because I don't understand it. And so what value is it that we're working with here? Like, what is who wins in the situation of the new math?
Well, yeah, part of that goes to, I don't really like economics, but I guess funding, to where the states are having to choose a new textbook, and they're trying to decide which one. I'm assuming some get pushed at them. But you can get this book for a little bit cheaper.
I was going to say, I wouldn't call that.
Or is it apparently like one of like the main textbook producers, like all based out of Texas? I just like some like the biggest ones. And
that's what boggles my mind. Like, you think of like okay, so Knoxville is third, fourth largest. Knox County is third, fourth largest school district in the state.
Right.
60,000 kids. I'm assuming Nashville and Memphis are probably a little bit more than twice of that. Chattanooga is probably about equal. Tri-Cities is a little bit less, whatever. I mean, how many million kids do you think are in Tennessee state schools?
No idea.
I don't know. Why can't we create our own textbooks? Like, I feel like there's enough students that there would be enough demand. Like, why are we using these major publishers for textbooks that charge these crazy prices and shit? Like, it's just
like generally the economics of is the more that company is able to produce, the cheaper they can then produce it at.
Right, but the less specific those books are.
Right, but why should our algebra be different than Kentucky's algebra?
I mean, it's when are we teaching algebra? We have a timeline that the state of Tennessee's Department of Education sets up.
All right.
that is not the same as Kentucky's or Texas or California or whatever.
Huh?
The timeline of how we teach is set forth by the state. What we teach, what year we teach it.
Yeah.
Well, if you're teaching a third grader algebra and a seventh grader algebra, you can use different language and different terminology because of the age and other education that student has. That education is built upon the education before.
But the actual grade we start teaching algebra is different from state to state?
I don't know if it's different from state to state. I would assume it is.
That's what you were saying.
I would assume it is, yes. I would assume that different states do it at different times. I wouldn't think it's as significant as 3rd and 7th grade or anything like that, but I would think some states do it in 7th grade, some states do it in 8th grade, something like that.
You think this?
I think this. I would assume this, yes. I would assume the state of Tennessee has a different timeline than the state of Kentucky.
What benefit would there be to having different states teaching different algebras?
You're asking
not even different, not even from 6th grade to 7th grade.
You're asking me
Yes.
what benefit different states have to do different things differently?
Yeah.
So the person who argues that what benefit, because one of the questions I like to ask school board people is what benefit is it that Knox County and Shelby County are the same as school districts go?
Right.
So you're going to ask me what benefit it is for the state of Kentucky to do things differently than the state of Tennessee?
Yeah.
I don't fucking know. Obviously, I don't see...
Well, I mean, you're saying you don't know why we don't have different curriculum from state to state. And I'm asking you, why do you think... I'm giving you an example of algebra, geography, whatever subject you want to pick.
I don't know. I don't know what... I don't know what motivates the State Department of Education to set the things the way they set them. I don't know what motivates the state legislature to set the things they set for the way the schools work and how they want the schools to work. I don't know why CRT is such a big evil thing all of a sudden that never gets taught in schools anyway. But I don't know why that's a big thing. I mean, I know it is. It's politics. It gets fucking voters out. That's really. I was
just going to go along. You don't know why states don't print their own textbooks.
Right. But my point is that obviously the state of Tennessee,
that state book or that textbook is making a curriculum.
The state of Tennessee does it the way the state of Tennessee does it, and I don't think they do it the same as the states around them. So why are they buying books that are used in the same states as around them? Why aren't we creating our own books? I mean, again, we have enough teachers. No, we don't. But we have teachers that are teaching that are super smart, know what the fuck they're doing, know how to teach this stuff. Why aren't we having teachers creating the actual books that we're working in that are then disseminated to other districts in the state instead of taking outside stuff and then
supposedly it's
forcing these teachers into doing this thing anyway.
Approve these books, but
no, it's legislature and state school boards who approves these books, and then it's the whole contracts and this kind of other stuff. There's all sorts of bullshittery in that. It just doesn't make again. We can go down to a new bookstore. What is there any bookstores that exist in Knoxville anymore?
There's a few.
We can go down to one of those bookstores and I can buy a copy of 1984 for like $6.
You think so? McKay's maybe.
Brand new? You don't think? I mean, how much do you think 94?
Brand new? At least $20.
No.
$15 to $20.
Like a soft copy.
Yeah, even
softback, basic like pocket version, not one of the big nice looking ones.
All right, I guess 1984 wasn't that long of a book, but I'd still say 15.
All right, $15. That's the same book as it was last year before, like all the way back into whenever the fuck he wrote that shit.
Price doesn't go down just because it was written years ago.
I agree.
Like, Aristotle, this should be like 3 cents.
I mean, it does go down a little bit for that, but that's a separate economics conversation. That's not the point. It does go down, but
it's based upon demand. I mean, 1984 has always been a popular
you're right.
book.
It's based upon demand, and so when you're creating textbooks, you have a fixed demand. It's not all of a sudden Trump's president, so 1984 is all of a sudden relevant again, so we're going to start selling 1984 again. No, it's we sell textbooks. You're going to buy textbooks. It's not the same animal. Like I can go, like you can go and I could write a book on.
That's why everyone in college hates the fucking thought that they have to buy a new textbook like every couple of years.
Because it's a fucking scam.
They can't buy the 2 editions previous.
Right, because it's a scam that they use to sell textbooks. It's not about educating the kids anymore. That's my point. That's the concern, is that because of this system that's in place with the way textbooks work, is it's not about educating the kids. It's about selling the next generation of textbooks. So we changed the way we do math.
And that's why I wonder if those educators that are choosing the textbooks are foregoing the actual learnedness of it for the actual cost savings.
Right.
Of saying, we've only got this much of a budget.
I just don't I can't wrap my head around why textbooks are.
Maybe someone were just being like, oh, well, that's what 75% of the other states, so it's got to be good. Check, let's pick that book.
I just can't figure out why books are so expensive. Like, that's just like I don't feel like textbooks should be that expensive. That's part of my problem. Same thing I have with the healthcare thing. It's one of those industries that's so intertwined with who they serve and how they serve who they serve that it doesn't functionally make sense anymore. That's, I guess, the more less succinct way to say what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like it's no longer about the end user. Maybe. I don't know. Like, I guess, like, again, this is one of those things I try to play out in my head. It's like,
it's kind of the argument I've had with you for many years.
They can't see your eyes you're making at me right now. I got to talk.
Oh.
What argument that you've had for many years? Do we need to start this right now?
Oh, no, it's just about just business. And the business is in place to essentially kind of feed the shareholders and make them happy and to make money.
Okay, I agree with that. 100%.
But it sounds like, in what you were just saying before, that the textbook makers should be making it for the end recipients.
Who's the customer? That's the problem. The customer is not the end recipient. The customer is the state that's buying those textbooks for their students. That's where shit gets weird. It's where the state gets involved when things get funky. That's why LASIK's so cheap. But a ankle surgery is expensive.
Oh, fuck LASIKs.
I'm saying.
Goddamn lasers burning off your eyeballs.
You're right, but it got cheaper. It got way cheaper because it's not a super regulated industry. Textbooks is a super regulated industry. They're super involved with the state to do the process. So it becomes only 1 or 2 people can do it because only 1 or 2 people have the relationship with the state to produce the thing that the state wants. And so it's an incentives game. And again, it's one of those things I say 1,000 times on the show. It's an incentives game. What's your incentive as a bookmaker when I'm asking you to make textbooks? It's to make the textbook I asked you to make, and then I sell you the textbook that you asked me to make at a premium price because I'm the only one that can sell it, because I'm the only one that can make it, because I'm the only one that has the relationship with you to be told how to make it. But the end user doesn't win for that. The textbook maker does, and they make profit for their shareholders, just like you said. It's again, when the state gets involved is where I get iffy on it. I'm not a big corporatist either by any means. I have issues with the idea that the shareholders that have nothing to do with the company need to be the main profit winners in it, but capital matters a lot on companies even existing. So we'll push that part of the conversation aside. We can have that conversation separately if you'd like. But when the state is involved, it's an incentives conversation. And the state is the one that's supposed to be controlling the incentives, and they suck at it consistently over and over again. And that's why we have overpriced textbooks that don't teach very well. Because the state's not concerned with the end user either. They're concerned with the politics of, well, we got this great textbook for way less than we should have paid for it, or whatever the fucking bullshit is that they want to sell it as next time they get an election cycle or whatever.
So why do we think textbooks aren't that great?
It's not that they're not that great, it's that they're overpriced for what they are. I don't understand why they're so expensive.
College-wise, I mean, I have no idea how much a junior year of high school geography book actually cost.
I mean, I don't know if they still do it. Like when we were kids, we had to turn them back in, and we had 10-year-old
right,
textbooks.
Yeah, you never got to keep those. No, yeah.
It seems like a lot nowadays. They're more like
They were like passing them out at the beginning of the year. Like some people got the really nice copies, and some people got the really shitty copies.
Right, and I remember taking paper bags from the grocery store and making book covers.
Yeah,
because then I could scribble on the book cover, and then I didn't get in trouble for the book or whatever. But
you still write your name in there for you got to have it this year.
Right, but I remember having the conversation with one of the school board members about it, is about how ridiculous expensive textbooks are and stuff like that, and just like, why are they that expensive? It's like, I don't know, they just are.
Yeah, maybe a market that's cornered, like you said. But there's only 2 or 3 companies, and they're like, it's either me or the other guy. Which one do you want to pick?
Well, the answer was is that we have to compile that information, and then we'd have to go and get the copyright people involved. And so where we compile that information from, we'd have to go and get permissions and all that kind of stuff. And it would presumably be more expensive for us on a district level, at least, to produce our own textbook. Not because the production of the book would be that expensive, but to get all the permissions to use all the information that we're putting in those books. So to take a quote from, whatever. Like, I don't know. Like, again, 1984. To take a quote from 1984 and use it in a textbook, because we're having an English lit textbook that we're doing this, that, and the other end. And to get permission from Orwell, we have to go to that publishing company and get permission and do all that kind of shit, and then pay our royalties and
so these big
X, Y, and Z
already have that to where they're not having to pay it.
Right. And or the big companies have a better ability to negotiate that for a better price or whatever. And again, it goes into like, algebra is a great example. Who owns algebra? Who owns the words that are involved in explaining algebra? Who are we paying royalties for an algebra textbook? Like, I understand an existing textbook, if we're going to use that existing textbook and literally rip pages out of it and shove it into our book, yes, that would be copyright infringement, I guess. But like, who owns the explanation of algebra? Is there some Newton Trust out there that we're paying fucking royalties to for understanding algebra better?
Yeah, so descendants of Pythagorean.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. That's owned by Lord Seth Barber. So you got to pay a nickel every time you say that out loud or print it. I'm just saying, like, I get, moral of the story is I don't know. Get into English lit or get into literature classes or something like that, or modern art or something like that, where you're printing copies of great, wonderful works of art or whatever. Yeah, okay, I understand there's royalties issues there, but what royalty issues do we have with the state of Tennessee history?
Do you have to do royalties if you just put it in the bibliography and you cite it correctly?
If it's a published, I don't know. That's a question for lawyer Jamie.
Yeah.
We need to get a better lawyer on here. I like Jamie a lot, but he is very specific, like most lawyers are.
He's like, I just do federal civil rights.
We need to get like a dozen lawyers on here just to have different specifics. Because I am excited to have him on for some of this conversation about some of these judge and DA and stuff like that coming up. But at the same time, it's like, you're a federal civil rights attorney. How much do you know about criminal court judge division 1? How many times have you been in that courtroom and dealt with that current judge?
But he said he wanted to be here.
I mean, I want him to be here because, he's more knowledgeable about what goes on in the courtroom than we are. And so I'm going to take it, but I'm concerned about how valuable his insight will be on some of it. It'll be better than ours.
Like, I thought you wanted to talk about just specifically the 2 federal judge races that are going on or whatever.
Roe v. Wade held up. That was an interesting one. I thought it was going to lose in Texas.
Huh?
That Texas law, they actually pushed it back.
I thought the most recent was a Louisiana law. They said that the Supreme Court won't rule on until probably June or July. No,
I know they pushed the Texas one. They fucked around with the Texas one. That was the most recent ruling on it.
I didn't hear about that.
Because that was what Matt was saying. Like, the Republicans are getting ahead of their skis.
I was thinking of what went to the Supreme Court.
I mean, I think it should be.
It was a Mississippi law that went to the Supreme Court.
I don't know. That's a weird one for me. It's just the states' rights. I'm a states' rights advocate, I guess, and so letting states make their own decision on it makes sense to me. Which technically would be turning over Roe v. Wade.
So I think with
it would just suck if you live in Alabama and it's like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Tennessee, Kentucky all ban it outright, and you've got to go to you got to figure out how to get to Georgia or Ohio.
Right.
If you feel like you really need to have an abortion or whatever, like that just sucks. Because then it becomes a classist issue, which is what it's always been anyway. That's really what it comes down to. It's a class issue. It's not a fucking rights issue.
That's where some of the lawsuits came from when it slowly started kind of getting eroded. Is people were saying they were under an undue, I guess, burden,
right?
To then having to drive.
Right. It's a class. It's
like, okay,
right.
well, you've got it legal in the state, but you've got it in a state like Texas. You've got it allowable in 2 locations that are 700 miles apart.
Or even if you live in Texas and you are well off, you go to California and you get it done and you come back.
Right.
Because you can afford a plane trip to California where a lot of people can't. And again, it's one of those, who's it serve? That's another one of those. I mean, who's it serve to do this?
That was another interesting.
That's a weird super moral one, though.
There was an interesting article I read and kind of talking about kind of political promises and, things that people say on the campaign trail. There was an article I was reading about, Amy Coney Barrett, Kavanaugh, and I can't remember the other most recent Supreme Court justice that have put in. They've all asked them, about Roe, and they've all pretty much said, like, under Senate questioning that, Roe is decided law.
Right.
Yeah. And they get into power, and they're like, well, maybe not so much. Maybe it should be states' rights. And it's like, wait, what the fuck did you just say like 9 months ago when you were asking about this thing?
Well, I mean, and when you're
back
not
to asking politicians, things they say when they're
right, but when you're
politicking.
When you're not on the Supreme Court and don't have the authority to make an effect on it, then it is the law of the land, technically, if you get down to it. Like, I mean, realistically, it is the law of the land right now until the Supreme Court makes a decision to change that.
What they write in a Supreme Court ruling is their opinion.
Right.
And that's exactly what, the Senate Judiciary Committee, whoever questions Supreme Court nominees, is what's asking them, is what their opinion is on certain things.
Right, but just like we have when we are going to have interviews with these judges coming up, there are rules about what they can and can't answer.
Right.
And they can't talk about how they would decide in a situation. And so it gives them the leeway to say, it's the law of the land currently. Because to say otherwise would be...
That was not what they were saying.
I mean, but to say otherwise would be implying what they would do with the position if they had it.
Both of them said that it's decided law. Like, it is the precedent upon precedent, I think was like one of like the quotes. It is a precedent upon precedent.
Right.
Because it has been decided once in Roe v. Wade, and then I can't remember what the following was in like the early 2000s.
Because it is the law of the land currently, and when it becomes my turn to make a decision on a law that might change that law of the land, because that's what the Supreme Court essentially does, I can't answer that question because it is against the ethics of my answer.
Okay. Well, maybe they should have answered that way, if that's what they were being asked under oath, but that's just my opinion. I
agree. I think it's weird that they can't answer it. I think that's a weird... I don't want...
No, I'm just saying it just...
Who does the ethics serve that you can't...
It just goes into... And I can't remember if I mentioned it before. There was a study done of the general public of how they view the Supreme Court.
Right, it's politics.
And it was like a 60-40 versus how they see it as being a politics game versus an actual, like...
I mean, it's a weird
interpretation of law.
And I get it and I don't get it. It's a weird thing that the sitting president gets to assign them. Like, it's just a weird thing. It's just a weird thing the way it works.
Nominate them, yeah.
Right.
Essentially assign them, yeah. Like, this is the guy I want.
Right. I mean, McConnell did his little dance to keep whoever out.
Merrick Garland.
So that Trump got the first swing at it and that kind of thing. But, I mean, which is another round of politics and politics being politics. But it's like McConnell approved whomever Obama did nominate when Obama did nominate somebody. Not Merrick Garland, the other one that Obama got. I can't remember who it was.
Elena Kagan, maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. But I'm just saying, like, it's like, well, if you're so opposed to the mindset of said judges that an Obama would put up, why did you approve them? I mean, you were the speaker, or you were the Senate Majority Leader, whatever it was then. But now you're going to play some little weird politics game to get let somebody.
It was total fucking political bullshit.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying it is politics. It clearly is because it's a weird system the way they get the seat. in the first place. And so how is it not politics if it's a weird politics system that puts them there? I guess that's my point. All right, last call. We went way long.
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. Nothing? Can you go ice skating
nothing
downtown?
specific when we're trying to wrap it up.
Just making sure there's nothing.
I mean, you want to run down the rabbit hole, we'll go.
What do you got?
Nothing specific.
Outro? Damn it.
We are almost in agreement at almostinagreement.com. Please like and share wherever you find us. If you cannot find us on your local streaming device, please let us know what streaming device you would like to see that on, because we would love to get a part of them. Please also check out our website at almostinagreement.com. Like and share us as much as you please.
Hey, if you're running for office and wanted to email me to set up an interview, what email address would be good for that?
Let's try almostinagreement@gmail.com.
That is a fantastic email to get a hold of me so I can set up an interview for you, because we got like 70,000 fucking people running and they're going to be busy on it. So almostinagreement@gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Like, share, friend, follow, subscribe, whatever the things are. Do the things, help us out. Eric Wader on Monday. I'm concerned, excited. I'm not sure how that's going to go. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to it. It's always fun. Anyway, almost agreeing, everybody. Have a great night. See ya. I'm going hunting tomorrow, too. Boom.